Yeah, 1 2 1 2.
Hey yo, AC.
1 2 1 2. Mic check. Hey, can y'all hear me out there? Hey.
Against all odds.
Against all odds.
Against all odds. Against all odds.
Against all odds.
Against all odds.
The podcast.
Shout out to Rockhound Detroit Lions, man. My pride.
All right. Hey, good morning. Welcome into the Rise Grind Morning Show. It is, St. Patty's Day. How about that? What a wonderful morning. Got to thank the OBS gods out there for making my morning complete fun. I was going to use another word, but I decided not to. So my bad. I mean, I don't know why OBS does this, and they do it way too often, but they just updated again, and it just killed all of my scenes and sources and everything else. So I'll be bare minimum this morning. I built some as fast as I could. We'll do what we can. We should have all 22 coming on here in just like 20 minutes. So we're not really going to get through a whole lot this morning. And I don't even know how the scene's going to look just yet with him in it. So it could be struggle bus central here on a Tuesday. But it is what it is. I'll get it fixed this afternoon once we get rolling. What I wanted to start with, though, I mean, I planned on already being through a couple of videos by now. I wanted to get into the Roger McCreary press conference. I didn't really have an opportunity to go through that. And maybe I'll do that if I get some time here in just a few moments. I have them loaded up. But while we have 20 minutes, I released a video this morning. Not by choice. I really wanted it to go out this afternoon. But I released it this morning because I knew there's going to be some struggles. And usually those videos in the morning don't do well for me. So I want to talk about it. Yesterday, over the last week or so, I mentioned last week that I was going to deep dive Brad Holmes draft picks. Free agent pickups over the last 5 seasons. Because all over social media, and even in some of my comments on videos, which there's been hundreds and hundreds, which thank you guys. And then also, I mean, I wake up every day now, and it's just amazing. So I'm going to quick pivot. It's just amazing that I wake up every single morning and I have like 10 new subscribers to Substack. And then I'll get 10 more throughout the day. So whatever's happening, it's working. I certainly appreciate it. I appreciate all the feedback on the videos. You guys are doing an amazing job in supporting. There goes another subscriber. And doing an amazing job at supporting the mission here in the channel. And I can't thank you enough. So keep being you, keep doing what you're doing, and I'll keep doing what I'm doing. But don't be afraid to send me suggestions, ideas, topic ideas, video content ideas. I'm all about it. I want to do what you want, and that gives me an opportunity to do that. So let's just start with what the video was yesterday that I created, dropped this morning. And it's about Brad Holmes' free agency. It's about the Lions' free agency. And so the sentiment online right now is that we don't normally do all these 1-year contracts, and Brad Holmes isn't building a good team. And what is the Dollar General Brad doing right now in not spending money on free agency? And I know a lot of you that regularly visit this channel, which, by the way, 59% of you watch regularly, are not subscribed. Do you know what that would do to this channel? That would put us, into the next stratosphere, if 59% more people subscribed on the daily. 45% unique viewership over the last week is just insane. 24% click-through rate is ungodly. So, again, another pivot. Thank you. The sentiment online is that we're buying up all these cheap free agents, all these nobodies, all these no good athletes, and it's not true, right? This has been the plan from day one. This has been the plan, and I have the proof to back it up. But there's more to this than what meets the eye, and that is where I think that the disconnect happens. Everyone thinks that we're supposed to be able to spend all this money. Can't happen. And it's backed by multiple GMs that either do the same thing or they have to do things a certain way based on how you've built your team, right? The right way, which I think Brad has done, and how you're trying to stay competitive every single season, manage the cap every single season, and re-sign your players so that you can create a good core, nucleus that maybe, just maybe, you'll get an opportunity at a Super Bowl. You could do everything right. This is the hot take of the day. You can do everything perfect as a GM. Absolutely perfect. You could hit 100% on all of your free agency pickups. You could hit 100% on all of your drafted guys. You could manage the cap and never be in trouble and still never make the Super Bowl. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. You could do everything right and never make it to a Super Bowl because of injuries. And we can't blame Brad for injuries. Like, that's 100% injury rate in the NFL. There is no, we haven't had injuries for this amount of days on the wall, in your industrial complex or your manufacturing plant. They try to go injury-free. Yeah, in the NFL, we had an injury 5 minutes ago. We had another injury 10 minutes ago. That's the NFL. It's constant. And it's constant for the limited amount of players that are even in the NFL. I mean, what do you really have? Maybe 3,500 players? Maybe. And that's extending out to the 90-man roster through 32 teams. It's that's about 3,000, maybe, about 3,000 players. There's not that many players, but they're 100% injury rate. So here we go. Let me just kind of go through some of the info. Man, I'm all off base today, man. Everything is discombobulated after having to struggle through all this morning to try to get it even rolling. Okay, so Brad Holmes, when he came into Detroit, listen to this sentence very carefully. When general manager Brad Holmes walked into the Detroit Lions facility in 2021, the salary cap was a crime scene. Let that sink in for a moment. It was an absolute crime scene. What I mean by that is this. He had no money. He had nothing. He had nothing to operate from. Nothing to operate with. And it wasn't his fault. That was Quintricia, right? That was all of the bad decisions that were made before him. Let me see if I've got Spotrac up and running this morning. Oh, well, I guess we don't. Hold on. Thought I did. Oh, I got a volume issue? Okay, hold on. Well, let's just add that to the list today. That's all I need is a volume issue. Those are not easy to figure out, but yeah, it's way down, huh? There we go. I got to go check one other thing. See, there's always something, man. It's always something. We were on a good run, man. We were injury-free for about a month. If I had a production manager, I wouldn't have to worry about any of this stuff. So if you know OBS, and you know streaming, email me, mailbag@rockhound.com. Let's get you up and running. All right, now we should be good once I reset it one more time. All right, so this salary cap here on the screen should be, I might as well leave this up so I can make sure it doesn't dip. The salary cap here on the screen, I mean, take a look at that. That's 2021. Negative $50.4 million in cap space. Dead cap number, $84 million. Now, you tell me, if that was your checkbook, what are you going to do? If that was your bank account, how are you going to get on the right side of zero? You're going to have to cut a lot of those streaming platforms that you have. You might not be able to drive that 2026 Lexus anymore. You probably can't live in the $1.3 million home. More than likely, you got to stop going to Applebee's every night. Or better yet, maybe you should start going to Applebee's and stop going to the Chop House. You get where I'm going here? You're going to go from whining and dining, with a nice, 1990s California red wine that costs $400 a bottle to now you're drinking $5.99 barefoot. That's what's going to happen. And that's exactly what did happen in 2021. I probably should have done this for the video, right? That probably would have been a better video. I went too straight-laced with it. Uneventful. So massive dead money allocation suffocated the books, right? The depth chart was depleted. The locker room lacked the requisite talent even demanded by Dan Campbell to start building a roster and to build a franchise. They were going to have to start from the mud, right? I say it all the time. They went past the studs. They went through the foundation, right? They started building from nothing. They scrapped everything. I think they brought in 12 players, maybe. 12. I think there was at least 12 players that were holdovers, starters or somewhat starters, first, second stringers from 2020. I could be wrong on that. It's been a while since I looked at it. Okay, so that's where you are in 2021. So you tell me, how is Brad going to build the team? Well, 1-year deals, right? You got to bring in guys that can start building the culture. You have to bring in guys that can start, trying to figure out how to win football games. Nobody expected to win any football games in 2021. It's not like, let me throw the analogy out there. This is not the 2024 Chicago Bears or 25 Chicago Bears, right? 25 Chicago Bears, because they were already drafting and buying in free agency and assembling some pieces, which just blew up on them this year. Or Seattle Seahawks. They were building and assembling some amazing pieces for the last several seasons. So this wasn't the 2025 Seahawks that he was taking over, or the 24 Seahawks that he was taking over. No, this was the 2020 Detroit Lions that was an abomination of a football team. So the Lions cap space prior to the new league year, like I said, was negative $84 million in massive dead cap hits and negative $50.4 million in cap space. So the price was not, or the issue, this was not like bargain shopping. It's not bargain Brad. It's not Dollar General Brad or Kmart Special Brad or whatever toxic idiocy you want to throw out there. It was a highly calibrated, high-stakes screening process that Brad Holmes brought in. The front office utilized the 1-year prove-it deal, which back then was a prove-it deal. Today, it's a contender deal, to aggressively test the external acquisitions. And if a veteran free agent wanted a long-term financial security in Detroit, well, they were going to have to prove it first. They were going to have to prove that their game film matched the exact physical profile, the culture, everything, the work ethic that they were looking for in Detroit. So they were not going to go out and just spend massive amounts of money. For what reason? They didn't have any. They had no money. Now, they got on the right side of zero, but it wasn't much. I think they ended up getting to $14 or $15 million that year at the most. That was just to sign some damn rookies. So Holmes himself, he said this exact statement. He said, quote, "Every move that me and Dan make, it has been made to sustain what we are building. Every single move. And I will say every single move we make and every single move we don't make is to sustain what we have been building. So, it's real." End quote. You should have known back then. The key phrase is every single move we don't make are the most important moves that he could make. Imagine had Brad listened to that side of the fan base that wanted Myles Garrett 2 years ago, or, Trey Hendrickson, or Jalen Phillips, or, Max Crosby, just name a name. Where would we be? We would be shedding players, not signing players. We would have cut just about everybody before the new league year and ate massive amounts of dead cap. It would have been 2020 all over again. Or 2021. It would have been 21 all over again. This is what people don't get, man. This is what people don't understand. So for the analysts, the readers, the listeners, everybody that is tracking the cap allocation, here's the raw year-by-year data exposing the financial truth about what Brad Holmes does. Remember, a lot of people think Brad Holmes doesn't sign one-year deals. This is new. It's an epiphany. Oh my God, what is he doing? I question your allegiance to the team if you haven't paid any attention at all. You just react. Or is it just all an act? Maybe it's just an act. Maybe it's just rage bait. Yeah, it probably is. So the overall signings in 2021, 14 signings. 1-year deals, 12. That is 85.7%. 2-year deals, they did 1. And in 3-year plus deals, they did 1, both at 7.1%. And then we have internal re-signings. Who did we hold over from 2020? There was 4. 1-year deals, 3. 75%. No 2-year deals, 1 3-year deal. 2022, the Lions had 13 overall signings. They signed 9 to 1-year deals, a staggering 69.2%. Now, that's a far cry from the 85.7% the year before, but it gets better. 2-year deals, we signed 3, and 3+ year deals, we signed 1. Internal re-signings, there were 7 from 2021, of which 2 were signed to 1-year deals, 2 were signed to 2-year deals, and 1 was signed to a 3+ year deal. Then 2023 happened. We had 16 free agency signings. 16, the most we've ever had. 10 1-year deals at 62.5%. 2-year deals, we had 3 at 18.8%, and 3+ year deals, we had 3 at 18.8%. The internal re-signings were 9. That means 7 were from outside the building. The year before in 22, we had 13 and 7, which means 6 were from outside the building. And then in 2021, we had 14 and 4, which means 10 were from outside the building, OFAs. 2024, the Lions had 14 signings in free agency. 10 of them were 1-year deals at 71.4%. We had 10 internal signings that season, which means we had 4 free agent signings from outside. 1-year deals for those, external or internal re-signings, 10. Or I'm sorry, 8. 80% of those internal re-signings were on 1-year deals. We gave a 2-year deal to one player and a 3-year deal to a second player. Back in 2023, the Lions had 9 internal re-signings, of which 5, 55.6%, were on 1-year deals. 3 were on 2-year deals, and 1 was on a 3-year deal. And then 2025 last year, we had 14 free agency signings, of which 5 were internal, which means 9 came through free agency. Of those signings, overall, 12 were on a 1-year deal for back to 85.7%, which matches exactly what we did in 2021. We had 1 on a 2-year deal and 1 on a 3-year deal. Internal signings that year were 5. 1-year deals, 4. 80%. We had 1 2-year deal and 0 3-year deals. So what does the master aggregate tell you? This is wild. These numbers, I didn't make it up. This is what it spit out. 1-year contracts. We had 36 primary signings from 21 to 25. 30 of those players were on 1-year deals. That's 83.3%. 3 players were on 2-year contracts at 8.3%. And 3 players were on 3+ year contracts at 8.3%. I don't know how the numbers added up like that, but it's kind of odd. 83.3, 8.3, and 8.3. So there you go. Brad is doing exactly, I probably should have taken this off the screen a long time ago. Brad is doing exactly what he has been doing. Now let me show you 2022. This is what I was trying to do. I just got lost in my own sauce there for a minute. This is what I was trying to show you. So in 2022, we start the year we got negative 8.3 million. We have 40 million in dead cap. So we go from, I mean, what a massive jump, right? Brad, by being extremely smart and savvy with these contracts, you go from negative 50 to negative 8. That's the $42 million gain. You know, part of that was because of the salary cap increase, but a lot of it was because of the restructurings and the structure of the deal. I got to run through this because we've got all 22 popping in here soon. So when you isolate the rare multi-year deal exceptions that Brad has handed out, acquisitions like defensive tackle DJ Reader, running back David Montgomery, those were highly specific and targeted strikes, right? Those were players that you knew that you could trust, that met all of the qualities that you were expecting to be great players and great teammates and good leaders. Yep, DJ Reader is coming off of a major injury, but guess what? It worked out. He came off of 2 major thigh injuries, quad injuries. A lot of players never returned from 1. He returned from 2, and it ended up being a really good player for the Lions. And he didn't get some massive bloated contract. So there are players that the capability, the locker room presence, everything, it lined up to the established culture, or establishing a culture, I should say. So you cycle through all these short-term contracts for rotational pieces, it starts to generate that immediate and compounding financial surplus. So every year that he does this, it's like compounded interest. Every year he signs a 1-year deal, you're banking some money for the next season because, yeah, that might all hit in year 1. You might add 1 void year, whatever it is. But now you don't have to worry about that 2 or 3 year deal that when you have to cut that player or release that player or trade that player, whatever. Now you have everything coming due in that season, which bloats the salary cap in a bad way. So do other GMs operate the same? What do they say about the Dollar General, right? So to understand, I think the leverage of the 1-year deal, the 1-year contract, you have to step inside the war room and listen to the men and the women that are holding the checkbook. And the 1-year deal is the ultimate double-edged sword in the NFL. We get that, especially for roster construction. But it's also a mechanism to protect the salary cap, evaluate the talent without long-term risk, and manipulate the future spending power. So here's a strategic reality detailed directly by the men building NFL rosters. Now, I do need to update this because I need to say men and women. I'm not sexist or anything like that. That's just a mistake by me. Number 1, Brandon Beane, highly respected GM from Buffalo Bills. His quote on this situation is, in order to work the cap, the 1-year deals, yes, we'll have to do some of that. We'll have to be selective. Now, during this conversation, he said that, being really exposed the reality of paying franchise quarterbacks, Jared Goff, and once a team allocates top of the market cash to a premier player, the middle class of the roster must be constructed with surgical precision. Hasn't Brad done that? But then again, the 1-year deal becomes the primary tool to plug all the holes on your roster and establish the depth without committing guaranteed money into future seasons, future years. Well, we paid Jared Goff. We had no other way to manage the cap, to manage the roster, than for Brad to continue doing what he's been doing. This was not new for him to pay Jared Goff and then do one-year deals. No, he set that precedent from day one. He is targeting players that are depreciated assets within the league that still have a really good opportunity to perform at a high level. And I explained that in the Roger McCreary video. I explained that in the Christian Isian video. Tom Telesco, Raiders, says, quote, you try to keep as many options open as possible. Could there be a lot of one-year deals? I'm not sure about that. Because a one-year deal is a one-year cap hit at the full amount. That may work for some teams, and that may not work for others. Multi-year deal, you can prorate the numbers down so that the cap number is smaller. Now, I agree and disagree here, because in a one-year deal, and especially if you look at what Brad's doing, I mean, you're looking at 1.2, 1.5, 1.7, 2.5, 4 million, very small deals. It's still big money, but it's fairly small compared to the 2 at 16, the 2 at 14, the 3 at 25, or the 3 for 48. So yeah, you do a multi-year deal and you leverage it in a way that you're putting a small cap hit up front. You're backloading it. You remove the guaranteed money in that third year and you add a void year or two. Yeah, you kick the can a little bit. But what happens if that player gets injured? What happens if that player doesn't work out? What happens if you run into a cap situation? Now you have to take your medicine and release that player, and you're going to eat more cap. More dead cap, right? So the roster building impact here that Telesco kind of pulls back that curtain on the actual accounting mechanics. A general manager has to weigh the benefit of absolute future cap flexibility against the reality of absorbing a massive, unprorated cap hit in the current season. But if you look at how Brad has done this, they haven't done that. They have not accepted or really had a massive cap impact because of one-year deals. A lot of these deals are the bottom 10, 12 contracts on the top 51. Joe Schoen from the New York Giants says, quote, we were not really able to be active this year at all, but I think come out good in terms of salary cap health. I think going into next year, free agency will definitely have a lot more flexibility than we did this year. So yeah, it's obviously important getting that in order the best we can, end quote. Now, again, the roster impact here is that this is a blueprint for the franchise teardown because the Giants are rebuilding in a sense. This is last season. Schoen illustrates how a GM has to purposely eat the dead money and utilize cheap, short-term stopgap contracts, the one-year deal, to kind of reset that ledger. It's engineering the exact financial flexibility that is required to strike aggressively in future off seasons, which I'm pretty sure they did this year. And Brad will be able to do the same when some of these contracts are less bloated, right? But if you think Brad is making a bunch of mistakes, then I would say the only mistake that he made was signing Aiden Hutchinson. The other mistake was if you had your, ability to see the future, signing Kirby Joseph. Y'all know that I wanted to trade him right away anyway because of what you would have been able to get in return. To me, far exceeded keeping a player that will never get back to 10 interceptions. And we'll probably get 4, 5, or 6 every year after that. It's just the reality of the game. It's not a knock on the player. Chris Ballard of the Indianapolis Colts says, quote, in free agency, we'll be smart. We're not going to chase the big names just to make a splash. Sounds familiar, right? He says, we'll bring in players who fit what we are trying to do. That's an exact model sentence of Brad Holmes. The roster impact here, again, is franchises get paralyzed by paying for past production rather than future scheme fit in production. Kirby Joseph, you just paid a massive amount of money for what he did the season before. If you would have signed him to an extension the year before he had those 10 interceptions, you would have looked like a genius. But now, hindsight, kind of tugging at Brad Holmes a little bit because it didn't work out so well. Or at least it hasn't. We don't know what will happen this year. The reality is this, what does it all mean? Well, Daniel Jeremiah, I think, is a pretty well-respected individual across the NFL landscape. Former NFL Network draft analyst, or still NFL Network draft analyst, has consistently praised the alignment between the front office evaluation and the on-field execution, noting that the Lions operate with absolute conviction. The Brad Holmes' willingness to aggressively trade up for his specific targets is only possible because he hasn't buried the future cap space in bloated multi-year free agent deals. So what does 83.3%, what does an 83.3% clip of one-year deals actually buy you? It buys you a sustained championship window. If you believe in the window, that's what it does. So by executing the exact financial blueprint over the last 5 seasons, Brad Holmes has completely eradicated the salary cap nightmare that he inherited, and he did that quickly. He used one-year contracts as a shield. He insulated the depth chart with veteran production while keeping the books entirely clean for the players that matter most. Because Brad Holmes refuses to overpay the B-tier free agents, the Lions had the liquid cash required to lock down the foundational pillars of the franchise. Jared Goff, Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, others. Now entering the 2026 season, the Detroit Lions operate from a position of absolute power. The roster is insulated. The salary cap is completely weaponized, and the front office goes into the NFL draft without a single glaring hole that forces them to reach and draft for needs. Brad Holmes didn't just survive the 2021 salary cap deficit. He has now built a sustainable powerhouse. I hope I was able to explain what's really happening. Now, that doesn't mean you're still going to agree with what Brad Holmes is doing. I understand that. But at least now the truth is out there and the research is done. And nobody, and if anybody really says that this is not what the Lions normally do, what is Brad Holmes doing? Oh, shit, he is in the back room. Then I just saw him. Hold on. Then you can send him this article. All right, be back in a few moments with All 22.
Throwing middle, caught inside the 5. Jahmyr Gibbs to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. 14 yards on the strike. Goff to Gibbs. You can't cover that man one-on-one. You just can't do it.
Nice job.
Jared takes the snap, back looking, throwing middle. Got Amon-Ra inside the 2, to the 1, to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Nice job.
Mariota's got it back. Pressure comes. He's hit. Slips out of it. Rolling to his right. Now he's going down. Brian Branch got him. Sack for the Lions. Snap taken by Mariota. Wants to throw it. Gonna get hit. Gonna get sacked.
Yes,
Take it down. Brian Branch got him second time today.
Nice job.
Hands it to Gibbs, running right, runs through a tackle, gets down to the 10, Gibbs through the 5, still fighting, down to the 2, down to the 1, to the end zone.
All right, here we go.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions. He did not
What's up, man?
quit.
How you doing? Good morning.
All right. Got everything set up, huh?
Yeah, it's working. I think we're all right. No, yeah, your background's much, much better today. We're rocking and rolling. Here we go.
Yeah, man.
Off to throw again, does, middle, J-Mo angling to the end zone, touchdown Detroit Lions. J-Mo flips into the end zone for 6.
Nice job.
Pressure by Hutchinson, he goes down
All right. Hey, I got a couple of things I got to tighten up on your picture real quick, but good morning. Why don't you tell her? I mean, everybody knows who you are, but why don't you give us a quick introduction this morning and what's on your mind today, man? Free agency.
Yeah, we're back into regular mode. Me and you ask the questions and I answer. It was a lot of fun. I guess it's Sunday night, right? At this point in time, like between working on the website and free agency stuff, 2 days ago feels like 2 hours ago, but simultaneously feels like 3 weeks ago. So, glad to be here this morning, and thanks for inviting me.
Well, I'm super glad. I'm super excited to have you here this morning because the project that you have been diligently putting together for everybody, this collaboration is needed. Number one, I think you guys have done an excellent job with it. And I can't wait for everybody to really get in there and start exploring. So since we've already spoke
it wasn't
about that,
just me. I mean, that. I mean, just like we talked Sunday. I mean, there was, Jen from our Ravens Discord. She did the bulk of the work as far as the coding, the organization, and I think I even said this to you. She dummy proofed it for people like me and Jake Hallett who. Could not ever, basically for us to code something like this, we would have had to use an AI tool, obviously. She did the majority of the coding and I think utilized some AI functions in the background and made it look really beautiful. We were, the first time we saw it, when she showed it to me, we met on maybe it was 4 Fridays ago. We met in like a Zoom or something, and she showed it to me and I was blown away. And just like most people who are super talented, just like some people who are super talented at something, she had no idea. She was like, I didn't know if you would like the interface and the navigation. And I said, this is beautiful. This is extremely elegant and I love it. And so I hope other people do too. There's obviously still a little bit of work left to do on it, especially the offensive line pages. And wide receiver. And literally, as you and I are talking, I'm adding film, to the site at the same time.
So in case the people out there have no idea what we're talking about, first, good morning. Welcome into the
Draftsignal.pro.
Yeah, so welcome into the Rise of Grind Morning Show. I'm here with Coach DC here of All 22 Films, Ravens fan. And Draftsignal.pro is what we're talking about. So it's a website built by Coach DC and his team to share a collaboration view of evaluations on the upcoming draft prospects, and it's extremely in depth. So if you wouldn't mind telling us more about it, I'm going to get it put up on screen here.
Ended up being, I can share my screen if you want, or it's up to you. Ended up being at this point 13 different collaborators as far as people. If you want to go to the top right and go to collaborators, I'm not sure how it'll show up on your page, but basically it'll show people like yourself, Jake. Oh, good, it's in the vertical form. So is that a mobile?
No, this is just website.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, usually the mobile formats everything vertically, including the film, which is kind of nice. But it just shows everyone who provided evaluations or any type of input on players. As well as their bio and links to their social media, stuff like that, so that if there is traffic to the site, which we hope there will be, then it drives people's engagement or drives people's attention to, your social media or, Jake Hallett's social media or Jason Smith social media. So we have a draft board on there, which you see. We have my favorite page is this one right here. It's the player spotlight page. It's got it, if you're looking at it generally, it's going to be slices exactly, horizontally, and you can click on each player and just see A, the write-up, and B, a picture. Next year, what we've considered doing is this view here for each position. So basically, this would be all running backs or all tight ends. The only problem is, some of these positions like edge defender and offensive line, how many of those can you make? There would be 3 dozen in some cases. So it ends up being, pretty easy to navigate, we think, and includes film all the way at the bottom. We hope that it is enjoyable and smooth for people to run it. And, like I said, we're just now adding offensive line film this morning along with wide receiver stuff.
So I'm gonna not click the film, obviously, because these are,
Of course.
copyright, protected in that. But you guys can enjoy it. Draftsignal.pro again is the website. Right now,
I think
it's
that's yours on Jeremiah Love right there. I think that's your
Yeah.
evaluation. That's,
That's-
that should be you right there.
it's one of mine there. I don't know how many of mine are actually on the site, but when you go down, you can actually kind of visit each player profile through position, and this is where I think people are going to have a lot of fun with it, because you can say, man, I need to learn about running backs today, or I need to learn about tight ends today, and then you can go in and get all the information that you're looking for. You can select 3 different ones like I did there: cornerbacks, running backs, tight ends, or you uncheck running back, uncheck cornerback, and now you just have the tight end profiles.
Yep.
And let's say, you know what, I don't know who Michael Trigg is, tight end out of Baylor. Let's just take a look.
You will after you watch the film, if someone doesn't, because
Yeah.
he's a freak of nature and a real matchup problem. And we got an evaluation from EA Edgar Allen, who's actually a good friend of mine and someone who I respect a ton. And then the other one was Jason Smith, who runs Huddle It Up Films. It's a Ravens content creator, and he does spectacular work on the draft. In fact, he shared his Ravens centric big board last night, and I'm in awe of how detailed it is and how he can get through so many players. This website would not have occurred if it weren't for 10 plus other people providing evaluations. I only personally got through 45 players. That's it at this point in time.
So, like this guy, I honestly didn't do any work on him. And when I started reading this yesterday and started looking at some of the film and cut-ups, these are high-quality cut-ups. These are not just your normal highlight. These are high-quality college cut-ups. And I'll tell you what, he's on my list now. Just because of this site, this guy was off my radar completely until I found him on this site. And this is why it's so fun, man. This is why it's such a good site. You get everything all in one.
We like the fact, what you highlighted a moment ago about the player positions. We like that you can quickly, for example, Lions, you're 17, right? You're looking at offensive tackle, maybe a special player drops to you, then of course that's different. But we would expect that Lions fans will be looking at the offensive tackle group, or maybe the edge defender group as well. But the idea is to filter it down, and other websites do the same thing. I feel like this is very quick and ease of use. The click of a button, you can see that just the positions that you want to, and the players that we think will be worthy of your attention. This is the lineups page. It's just basically a way to project where players might line up. What we envision for the future is the ability to show routes. If you scroll down a little bit, you can
I was just going to ask you to kind of explain this, because I haven't spent a lot of time on this page yet, but you got the 21 personnel versus a 3-4 base, or you've got 11 personnel versus the 4-2-5 nickel.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind explaining what we're looking at here.
So the bottom is the defense, the top is the offense. The 2 that are blank is the inside linebacker groups. I don't have any inside linebacker. Well, excuse me, other than Sonny Styles and Arvil Reese, I don't have anything added for inside linebackers yet. I mean, Sonny Styles and Arvil Reese actually have their own position group on the site. I called it, hybrid linebacker / edge, because that's what, I know that this name will bring up nothing but bad memories for Lions fans. And I'm not a huge fan of this guy either. But I have to say, Matt Patricia did Arvil Reese and Sonny Styles some great favors in getting them to line up as edge defenders and getting them to play a lot of inside linebacker, obviously, which was their natural position. Because what he really did was he showed the rest of the world, the NFL, hey, these guys can do a little bit of everything. I think he made them a lot of money. They did it themselves as well, but by putting them in those positions to play. So in any case, the bottom is the defense here, minus the 2 inside linebackers, which is 6 and 7. And then the top would be the offense. You can click on a player like, I don't know, you can click on, it should be Chris Brazel or Brazil. Yeah, that's fine. Malachi Lawrence.
That's my guy right
Theoretically, there. Yeah, just a short little blurb. And then you can click on his name and it'll take you to his player profile, or it should, take you to his player profile.
Yeah,
and
so you got to click up on the name here where he's underlined. It's just like a normal website. When you see an underline, it typically includes a link. So when I'm going to click Malachi Lawrence here, this guy's an animal. I like
Yeah,
him.
I think he's a great prospect for the Lions. And when we do have it, if you could just hold it right there for 1 second,
Sure.
when we do have the combine data like that, it generates the 40 time should generate like it should be like a stopwatch function, and it
Yeah.
should stop at 452. But it's off screen, when you load it because you got it set up vertically. But yeah, Malachi Lawrence, great fit for the Lions in my opinion. I think someone who would get a lot of reps in 2026. I don't think that even at 40, if you take him at 45, which is going to be close, I think we're on the same page that he's
Yeah.
a guy who
You got to move up.
yeah, he's probably in between, 17 and 45. But he's going to be on the field a lot for you if if you're able to get him.
So, I mean, just an incredible amount of data. This is truly a one-stop shop where you're going to get all the information that you need. Now, emphasis here that it's always a work in progress, and I would say, just like with anything, the best help that a fan can add to this, or the best value that a fan can add to this, is there a contact page? I haven't even noticed. Is there a contact page in here?
We didn't do that. No,
Okay.
we considered it, so we're just. I think this is a version 0.9.
Oh yeah, of
or
course.
whatever.
Yep.
And so we did not include a contact page, but someone could find it if they really wanted to do so. I guess the way that I would explain it is if someone really wants to contact me or anyone else, there's all the information, the pathway, to find that, so they can do so. We should
Twitter or whatever. Yeah, you can find somebody. But if you reach out to any one of the collaborators and you have a question or an idea, maybe a way to make it better as a consumer of the product, I'll be more than happy to send all the information over if you end up reaching out to me, or if you find Coach DC here on Twitter or wherever.
We've let's say, go back to Malachi Lawrence for a second, if you don't mind. Let's say that maybe we got something wrong with Malachi Lawrence and he's not number 51. I'll let you load it.
Yep.
It's as literally this happened last night. Someone told me during a premiere of a video that I had Mike Washington, something wrong with his.
Oh.
So I just went in and changed it. Go ahead and hit refresh. And it should change his number to 54, which is, of course, incorrect.
Yep.
But it's, ease of use. Like I said, Jen dummy proofed it. She made it to where someone like me had the ability to go in and enter things quickly. If you refresh it again, it should go back to 51. So the point is, we've already had 3 instances where fans watching videos, either the video with you or Dan Viennes from the Seahawks podcast, or Jason Smith, Huddle It Up Films, where fans have told us, hey, you've got a mistake here, and we fixed it instantly. So, no level of pride on my part. I've always wanted to make a website. I'm at the age where we thought creating a website 25 years ago was like this grand thing that was, going to be so difficult to attain. Nowadays, 14-year-old kids are creating it in their free time. So it's a totally different world. But for me, in my mind, it's still, like 2004. And I'm like, oh, we've got a website finally. 2 other attempts in my previous professions to try to make websites, one of which for a friend I spent probably a year on, and I just wasn't able to get it off the ground, unfortunately for him. So this is football-wise a huge endeavor, but also kind of like something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. So I probably put too many hours into it. You can see it on my face. I'm really sleep deprived.
It's part of the blood, sweat, and tears, man. When it's all said and done, which it never will be, you get to enjoy it. So can you explain this page a little bit here? So this is the Draft Signal Draft 2026. I assume that this is where you're looking at where players rank positionally. Could you explain this page?
Yeah, got 6 slots, I think, or actually 5 for each one. It's the way that it's formatted right now for you vertically. You'd have to hit those 2 little double arrows to go to the right and see like safeties, other positions. Yeah, so it should be, the players that we project could be drafted in a particular round. And so for example, Sonny Styles and Arvil Reese, they're not ranked as far as I think Sonny Styles is going to get drafted ahead of Arvil Reese. This is just, what round we think those guys will be taken in, from a projection standpoint. Some of those groups, I'm not sure if can you go to the left a little bit? I'm not sure if the offensive line group is populated there or not. Oh
Yeah, it's
yeah,
right
it
here.
has. Okay.
Yeah, it's in there.
Yeah. So I mean, you can tell what's going to go in the first round, right? Tackles, and then high level guards like Ione. So yeah, this is just our look at where we think guys might get drafted, and some of that will probably be moved around. In terms, can you scroll down a little bit? I think round 6 and 7 are pretty blank. Yeah, there's not a whole lot there as far as round 6 and 7. And some of those guys, and I think we got into this discussion on my channel a couple of nights ago, you and I, about the edge defender position. I don't know that those guys, maybe those guys could be moved up around. The 5th round guys could be 4th. The 6th round guys could be 5th. They're still talented dudes. There's still guys who can, obviously make your roster and be, possibly get on the field at the edge defense. I think it's a super deep group at the edge spot this year, along with tight end. Tight end, I don't think there is a bottom to the tight end group. I think that you can draft good tight ends this year in the 5th round, and they're going to get on the field for you some.
Yeah, absolutely. So these projections here are the draft signal projections. It's not a PFF board. It's not a Mel Kiper board. This is a Coach DC board, right? So
yeah, and the rest of the guys who helped out. Some of the guys have moved people around, and in some cases, so yeah.
Awesome, man. Anything else you'd like to show or share on the site?
No, I'm just super thankful that so many people said yes when I reached out. I mean, there came a point, I think it was 6 weeks ago, that this became, okay, we're going to do this. And I don't know that Jen,
sorry,
I don't
go
know
ahead.
that Jen knew what she was getting into, and I certainly did not. So I think there came a time about a week in where I realized, okay, to get this off the ground, let me rephrase that. Let me restart. When she presented me the graphics and the interface, and she showed me what it could look like, immediately I thought, okay, I'm not going to be able to get individually myself to be able to get to 120 players to do justice to what she presented me. Again, it was a preliminary look, right? What the work that she had done, I think it was over a weekend. And so that's when I sent out emails and messages and texts to people like you, EA, Edgar Allen, Coach Evans, Sip Tally. He's a Ravens content creator, but he does fantastic film study work. And so a bunch of people that I knew and consider friends in many cases to just ask, hey, would you like to be involved? I can't compensate you financially because I'm not generating any revenue from this. And so I'm not going to be able to pass any on to you either. But, it would be an opportunity to get your name out there, and we could funnel attention to your social media. And so, once that opportunity came to me from her, I wanted to pass it along to other people and offload some of the work because there was no way I was going to be able to handle it all. And, whatever you believe in, universe, God, whatever, it just provided everything that was needed because we have a working website that we're proud of, and we just hope people get to enjoy. And we also hope that it funnels people to each of you guys, YouTube and or Twitter pages, or like your Rocked on Cancer Foundation. We hope that it people find their way to that collaborators page and do more than just enjoy it themselves, but subscribe to you guys' channels and support you.
I mean, that's a winning strategy. And again, I can't thank you enough. And like I said the other day, it's absolutely crazy, right? So you reached out to me towards the tail end, I believe, of the combine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a week or two before that, I was talking on the morning show that I was going to create a digital magazine. So I started to take my evaluations and kind of put them onto like a magazine style of a look. And then you send me this text and I'm like, well, 100% I would do this because I'm already thinking about it and you guys are laying the groundwork. All I have to do is click send and here you go.
Yeah.
Here's the evals, and I mean, what perfect timing. So yeah, it aligned amazingly, man. So wonderful job. Hats off to you and the team for getting it done so quickly.
I think you're the fifth person, who has said that. I said this to you a couple of nights ago on my channel, but I'd like your viewers to hear it as well. So many, Dan Viennes, Jason Smith, so many other guys, Omari Brown, who's a Seahawks fan, so many other guys said the same thing. We were looking for a way to share what we like to do as far as the draft, and you provided that. And I was like, no, I didn't provide it. I'm just the middleman. I'm just the recruiter here for what I consider to be the head coach, which is Jen. And she, for a while, wanted to remain anonymous. And I said, I just don't know how I'm going to be able to do that. How am I not going to be able to thank you publicly when
Yeah.
people talk about this. And so, just, a lot of fun. And so for your viewers and listeners, I'm sorry if it was boring hearing us discuss it so much, but, we're proud of it. And we just really want it to be something that people enjoy and that we can improve the process for next year. I think Jake Hallett and myself, we're going to start working on the 2027 draft version May 1st.
Yeah, I think what you're going to find out, like the Todd McShays out there, that's what they do 24/7 is this will be nonstop. And, obviously the goal for me is to land as a scout somewhere and to have somebody funnel that 365-day plane ticket so that I can visit colleges and universities and in high schools if need be, to eventually get to that point. I think I'm still a couple years away. I have a lot more to learn. But this is step number 1 to getting noticed. So I just want to just shout out everybody. Obviously, Derek Coleman here, Coach DC, All 22 Films, Jake Hallett, at Judge Baltimore on Twitter. Super nice dude. What a wealth of knowledge. Former recruiting analyst, Edgar Allen, Coach Evans.
Back up. My buddy EA is a professional musician, and he has his website there. And so for
nice.
a moment, I just want to plug that. If anyone wanted to click on the link and check it out, he's incredibly
that link didn't work. It's
didn't work. Okay.
No, I just clicked it.
No.
But anyway, the website is Tim Jenkin, JENKINS music.com. So check out his website. I'll look at it when we're done today. Coach Evans, Sip to Tally, the guy you're just talking about, at Coach Evans9 on Twitter. Jason Smith, Huddle It Up Films, at Huddle It Up Films on Twitter. Dan Viens, guy that's been on my show a couple of times. Super appreciate, I had to give him a little ribbon, man, because, he's already wanting another Super Bowl. I'm like, man, like, come on. Like, well, the Lions need to get one before you guys get one. And then we're all good. But at Seahawks Forever, he does an excellent job. He's taking this on full time now too. And just what a great guy. Then there's me, of course, in there. We got Easy from Woodward Sports, so we've got another Detroit-centric, creator here at Speakeasy Sports on Twitter. Woodward Heavyweights, 5 to 7 p.m. on Woodward Sports.
I went on their show yesterday. Those guys made me laugh as soon as I went in there. So I had to shit on them a little bit too. So
there you go. Alan Frankel at Frank Sports 21. He's a bank analyst by day. I love this one. And a football junkie by night. What a great little sentence there. Adam Emmer.
Try that link again. Try EA's link again, please.
EA?
Yeah, refresh and then try it again.
EA Sports. It's in the game. Hey, there we go, Mr. Tim Jenkins.
Awesome.
What an image. I love it. I'd play some music, but I don't want to get hit.
That's what we considered next. Is I have two Baltimore area rappers that have been submitting me music for a couple of years. They asked me to just share them on social media, and I do so. And they've allowed me to use their music some. And Tim, I've considered playing instrumental music on the site that at a low level if people
while you're navigating around
with a button to turn it on and turn it off, toggle it. Just
that's actually pretty cool. Like if you think about it, as you navigate from page to page, maybe you have a different type of a song going.
Yeah,
that would be fun. And then next up, Adam Emmer at Seahawkers Pod on Twitter, and then Karuga. You're gonna have to say his last name for me. Coinage. Okay.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have said that. I would have said Konangi.
He's a writer from the Baltimore area. He's in my Ravens Discord, has his own YouTube channel. And I had to convince him to do some evals because I like the way he looks at the game and, just wanted to, I don't know what the word is. I wanted to, highlight people's work. Amari Brown is a Seahawks analyst who is primarily on Twitter, but he submitted some evals for me. And so he's just like so many of you other guys, just said yes when I asked, and I always tell young people, I'm like, you should just ask people what you want. You should just ask people what you need because sometimes their desires or their plans converge with your own.
Yeah. And you might get told no, but you know what? There's going to be a time you get told yes too.
Yeah. And so I think too often people, myself included, we feel selfish for asking people to do something for us. And sometimes when there's a convergence of our interest and your own, that's when beautiful things happen. So this is, this we hope is a first step towards that.
At Chris Just Joking, Chris Aguilera.
Funny dude, man.
Home field advantage at home field 29. So there you go. There's all the collaborators and then the other ones behind the scenes, Jin, and then I don't know who else you have involved, but yeah, great work, man. Awesome work.
Thanks.
Awesome work. Looks great. I'm sure that the finished product is never finished and never is. Especially guys like us that we're always striving for better and more. Let's chat about football for a moment because we just got through the grind of the first week of free agency. And your team obviously came out on top, at the very beginning. They had the Max Crosby thing going on. They decided to parlay that with Trey Hendrickson. And then there was this rumor, and I'm sure you already know of this rumor. And I don't know if it was valid, but they said that they were considering adding Max and Trey at the same time.
Sounds like that's the case. Yeah.
That's interesting. So now that we're out of free agency, week 1, I mean, there's going to be some trickles here and there. I think there was already one this morning. What do you see, I guess, specifically for the Lions between now and the draft? I just went through this. I don't know if you were listening at all this morning, but I wrote this piece about In Brad We Trust. It's a new volume that I'm doing. Sporadically I'm dropping pieces, but I went in and I broke down the last 5 years of free agency, and this is a crazy number, but 83.3% of his free agency moves between 21 and 25 have been 1-year deals, and then 8.3% have been 2-year deals and 3-year deals, and that was out of 36 OFAs, which I refer to that as outside free agents. Are you shocked at all by that number? And I guess how would you assess the 1-year deals when you're building a roster and what it does for you? I mean, I broke it all down this morning, so you're not going to tell me anything that would shock me.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about it?
I would have expected the percentages to maybe change a little bit related to the 2022 or 2023 draft. So I guess that's Gibbs, Campbell, Branch, Laporta, right?
Yeah, and they did. I mean, they fluctuated from, 21, it was 85.7, and then in 22, it was 69.2, and then 23 was 62.5, 24 was 71.4, and then 25, it jumped back up to 85.7, but overall, 83.3 combined for the first 5 seasons. So continue, you're saying.
Yeah, I feel like what you're going to have to do as far as re-signing those guys.
Yeah.
You hope all of them, right? You hope that Laporta and Branch are totally healthy and good to go. I know that could actually work in the Lions front office favor to an extent, and that the price tag might be driven down. We hope that, those guys get paid. I think I will tell you that, and I said this to Easy and those guys yesterday, I actually kind of like what Detroit's done so far, but I know that watching the rest of the league, the Ravens as well, the Ravens are swinging for a home run. And I think the Lions are not. I think the Lions are content to just hit a single or a double right now in free agency. And I like the Cade Mays signing. I really do. I think it checks off a box as far as the draft. To me, there's 5 centers in this draft, maybe 6. You could add a 7th. I think it might be Parker, who's played all over the place, or, other people have talked about. I think it's Fano.
Hatchett.
Possibly. Yeah. So, you could add a number if you want. Let's just say 5, but it could be 6 or whatever.
You know who's an interesting one to me, and I'm sure that this won't happen, but I think that there's a possibility, and I think I put it in my eval. Olivai Vegaloni. I could see him just being an interior monster. You move a guy like that to center, like if he can figure out that snap to step, my God, he would be just an immovable piece in the center of any offense, but it's unlikely something like that would happen.
I just think you guys checking off that box, you're not going to need to draft a center, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I think I maybe misspoke when you and I met Sunday night, or maybe you corrected me on it. They do have 2 4th-round picks, 2 5th-round picks, and 2 6th-round picks, correct?
1 4th.
Oh, it's only 1 4th?
Well, hold on. No.
I thought there was a second.
Yeah, the second one, I believe, was through the draft. So let me Let me pull that back
I
up.
could be wrong. Either way, I just don't think you're going to have to use any of that on center. And so I like the Cade Mays signing there. Having said that, with surplus picks, if it is 6, 4, 5, and 6, or only 5, theoretically you could grab one of those centers, but I think they're going to be gone by the time you get to those
The fourth round
those
picks.
Yeah, I think they're going to be gone. Those
Yeah,
guys,
so
those 5 especially.
Yeah, it is 2 4s, 2 5s, 2 6s. Which
Okay.
I mean, think about that for a moment, right? So let me pivot for just a second, because a lot of the fan base was like, "What in the hell did Brad just do by wasting?" They keep saying 3 third-round picks on Isaac Tesla, and I look at it differently. They selected him with a third-round pick. They gave 2 third-round picks to move up.
Right.
Over 30 picks to get the guy. You know what I'm saying? So, like, they what they did, I don't think was wasteful. And I think when you look at future draft capital, it's not valued the same as this year. So if you gave a 2026 third-round pick and gave 2 of them away to select, an earlier round pick, yeah, those are worth a lot more. But when you give up a 2027 third-round pick, it's valued by these GMs as like 50% off sale. Because and then if it's a compensatory pick, for adding having a head coach of minority descent move on and become a head coach or a GM, and you get a couple of third-round picks compensatory for that, they don't look at that the same either, because when you're picking at the end of a round, that is really the next round's first pick. I don't care that it's called a third-round compensatory pick. If you're picking at, what's the end of the second round? Where 64 traditionally, or 65 traditionally, whatever it is. If you're picking at 67, 68, 69, or I'm sorry, 90, 92, 93, 94, 96, you get what I'm saying. It's really the 4th round pick.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the way you evaluate it, and it's not worth as much. So here I'm looking at Brad, and he's like 2 4s, 2 5s, 2 6s. I think he kind of made up for those 3rd round picks.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
now,
hey, look, I've said before that I like, as someone who has sat for years and watched the Ravens stick and pick, to be exposed to Brad Holmes' way of doing things, and that 2023 stuff, brilliant. Some of the other stuff maybe hasn't worked out. Other guys that he took early. There's a couple out there that we'll see on, but I like the fact that he's signaling to us. He's brought 2 nickel DBs in the building, McCreary and is it Isaiah?
I think it's Izayan or Izian. I don't know. I'm terrible with last names.
Yeah, I haven't done the film study on him. I've watched a lot of McCreary film before. He spent some time in Tennessee, and then I saw him at Auburn. I remember scouting him for the draft, and I would say that McCreary has not reached what I think would have been his full potential, but he's still a pretty good player.
Yeah.
And I feel like for Detroit, given where you are with the safeties, some uncertain level of uncertainty, with Kirby, and then Branch's prognosis, I would say, is probably late 2026. I don't see where you're going to try to rush a guy like him back. I like those 2 signings, although I will say it's a deep safety class. And again, those 2 4s, 2 5s, 2 6. I spent about an hour yesterday watching Treydan Stukes from Arizona, and I was blown away, at his ability to play as a nickel DB. But I wonder if Brad Holmes isn't signaling to us, okay, we brought in a couple of veteran nickels. We're not going there in the draft. We're going to focus on maybe 3 or 4 positions globally with our first 5 or 6 picks. I think offensive tackle is obviously one of them. Edge defender. It wouldn't surprise me to see Detroit take 2 edge defenders in this draft, to be honest with you.
I'm right there with you. I think that there could be 2. Go ahead and finish though.
2, one of the traditional Brad Holmes Detroit Lions variety, a 6'5", 265 type guy like a Sutton, and then one that's a speed rusher type guy like a Romello Height or even Max Llewellyn, the guy from Iowa. And obviously those 2 would be late. They would be. I have them down in the 5th round, but I recognize that other people have Height in the 4th because he's got
Denny Sutton. You have in the 5th round?
No, Danny Sutton. I don't even know that he'll be there at 50. I'm talking about Max Llewellyn and Romello Height. Maybe I'm
okay. I didn't hear you right. My right ear's buzzing this morning, so I didn't hear you right. I heard half of it in this ear and nothing in this ear, so I got half of it. But yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I think that the Lions could potentially take to edge, and I don't believe that it's a necessary pull in the first round. We talked about this the other night. We both kind of feel, or at least the other day, that a trade back for both the Ravens and the Lions could make a lot of sense in the first round, simply when you're looking at the depth of the offensive line class, not necessarily left tackle, but guard as well. Because the Lions are still interested in bringing in yet another guard and or center, which could be third round, and then the
Never
edge.
have enough.
Yeah, the edge class, which is super deep, depending on your flavor, and then the safety class, which is deep enough to where you can get Zakia Wheatley, who's my number one safety to the Lions right now, in the 4th round, potentially
Another Maryland guy.
Potentially 5th round, but I would say you got 2 4ths. If you still have 2 4ths, you got to use one on a safety.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like I feel like the depth, the quality extends pretty far at safety, but there does come a point where there's going to be a cutoff.
Mhm.
It's probably somewhere around that range. Because you got all those comp picks too.
Yeah.
So the 5th, the end of the 5th or the middle 5th where the Lions are would be really, if you did the math, 32 times 5, 32 times, it would really be like 6th round. I think you're going to see a situation where it'll depend on what tackles are there at 17. If all of the tackles Brad Holmes and the staff want are gone, then trade back becomes a real option, in my opinion.
So let's
tackles there, you may not get that option.
Let's walk that out for a minute, because I don't know if you feel the same way, but when I look at the offensive line class, left tackle specifically, I only see a couple of true left tackles in this class. Yes, there have been times where right tackles have switched to left. There have been times where an amazing guard with the right size arms has transitioned to tackle, but not typically in a rookie year. I see Caden Proctor and Lomu as I believe it was Lomu as probably the more traditional left tackles in this class. And if you don't take either one of those guys in the first round, I don't see the benefit of adding yet another right tackle unless you're looking for the right tackle of the future, and Penei Sewell's going to the left. And that's the only way it makes sense for me. I think there's more right tackle opportunity in this draft than there is left. And if Brad misses in the first round and doesn't get that left tackle in Caden Proctor or the next best one, then he does trade back, then he's probably going to take a right tackle. And I think that then tells me Penei Sewell's going to the left, and it's already been decided. What is your thoughts on the left tackle class? What is your thoughts on that play with Penei going to the left for the Lions here in 26?
Well, my exposure to this offensive line class has been light compared to other years. Primarily, I would think because of this website. It took so much time in formatting and structural stuff. So just catching up to some of it. I will tell you this: I watched a lot of Blake Miller film last night, and was like, okay, I really like this guy. Obviously, he's a right tackle. And then I've been a big fan of Max. I'll give this one a shot.
Ahinachor.
Say it again.
Ahinachor.
Ahinachor. Okay.
Sneeze. Ahinachor.
Gotcha. Yeah. So those two guys are right tackle football players.
Yes.
But I think their range is different. So as far as where they'll be selected, right? I think Blake Miller is probably like 5 to 7 earlier than Max as far as where he's selected. So you get to 17 and all those, all the players who you might prefer, Monroe Feeling, all the other tackles are gone, then certainly brings up the possibility for Brad Holmes to trade back to 24, 26 and say, okay, we'll take Blake Miller or Max, and then we'll take the surplus pick, whatever that is, whether it's a second, a third, or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
I think you guys can kill this draft. I don't see any reason why Brad Holmes can't come out of this draft with 6 or 8 really spectacular football players, many of whom are going to contribute in 2026, but maybe a couple are guys that, project a year or two from now to have more impact. I expect it. I don't think that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell and those guys are going into this draft with anything less than saying we want an A+.
Yeah. Well, 1,000%. And I would say that we need it. I would say that this is a draft that we needed. Now, I floated out a crazy idea last night, which I'll bring up in just a minute. But do me a favor. When you do get into the offensive line, I would love your feedback on Cage Casey. If you don't have anything now, that's okay. Wait until you get it done.
Kid.
Boise kid. He's another true pure left tackle in this class. Definitely has the requisite size. I am a mixed bag on him, but at 110 to 130, I'd say yes. If the potential is there, if he slips even further, you got to snag him up. What's funny about Ahina Chor is this. During the Panini Bowl, I think I did a piece on him, or I was talking about him prior to the Panini Bowl, and he was one of the guys that I really wanted to get my eyes on, and we watched him through the first, I think, 2 quarters at least, just bully everybody in the run game. I mean, he was opening up holes like, you could drive a Mack truck through these things, and this is a guy that's been playing basketball, transitions to football about 5 years ago, or 4 seasons ago, whatever it is. It's not a long time, playing the game. And he's absolutely crushing it. And his agility is just, it's bonkers what this guy's able to do. Laterally, vertically, displacement power, technique, everything that he does is fun to watch. And so he was back in the 80s, 90s in the ADP, maybe in the top 100s of some boards in the ADP. And I said, you watch this guy. He's going to fly up this board after the Panini Bowl, after he proved to everybody, and then the Combine did a great job. He's now projected as a first-round pick.
He's my favorite tackle in the draft.
Wow.
That does not mean that I think he's the best tackle in the draft.
I agree.
As far as day one, if I had to play one game right now and I needed a tackle to try to win that football game, out of all the players that I've seen on film, I would pick the Miami kid. That's the guy that I like the best as far as balance of run pass and everything that he can do. But 1 year from now, projection, looking at talent and sometimes, age, because he is 23 years old, a guy like certain people would say, well, like Proctor, he's not even 21 years old yet,
yeah.
And all of the factors that he brings. But for me, the guy that I like for all of those factors, my favorite tackle in this draft is Max.
He has so much upside, and whether it's you park him in at guard to start his career until he catches, the NFL speed, and he gets more time on task, I don't think that's a bad idea. You then move him out to right tackle maybe for a season. You get his feet wet. Maybe he ends up becoming that left tackle of the future, and that's not an unnatural progression that, teams take their time with a player. They don't naturally start him out at left tackle because you got to protect your quarterback. Unless it's a team that's rebuilding and you have a quarterback that can move, then it would make sense because they can at least escape a little bit. But I see him projecting, into a tackle spot for sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to guard early. I don't think that's a bad idea.
The Ravens, a lot of the Ravens guys, Chris Aguilera has done the bulk of the work for offensive line for our website, and he's a spectacular draft guy. Doesn't run his own YouTube channel. He just appears on other people's stuff. He's spectacular with offensive line.
What was his name again? I'm sorry.
He's on the collaborators page. Chris Aguilera.
Chris, yeah.
Yeah, he's down at the bottom, and his Twitter is attached. Super. First of all, he's a hilarious guy. I can't be around him and not have fun and laugh. But in any case, he's talked about, and a couple other people have talked about Max being a pick for the Ravens in a trade back scenario because he could be a guard. And and Ronnie Stanley's our left tackle who's came back from some horrific ankle injuries over a 2 or 3 year stretch. And he's been stabilized now from a health and availability standpoint, which has been great. And he got paid. So, but as Ravens fans, we remember the 2020 and 21 seasons where he basically didn't play hardly at all. And so in our minds, we're always thinking, okay, Ronnie, how much longer does he have? It's 2026. So a guy like a Max who could play some guard and then move to tackle if unfortunately something happened to Ronnie, injuries, that looks tantalizing for Ravens fans. And I think Chris and a couple other people have mentioned that even in their evals. I do like that you guys have handled the center spot. And so now you're whittling down or checking off boxes, like I said earlier. Okay, this is handled and we can deal with these other things. I feel like Brad Holmes is I think the plan here is pretty clear. Tackle at 17, unless, those guys are gone, move back 7, 10, maybe 12 spots, get a Blake Miller or a Max, and recoup another pick as well. I think it's a great opportunity for Detroit. Let's do it this way. If Branch and Laporta didn't have the injury concerns,
Yeah.
and then Kirby as well, you guys would have a lot different feeling, I think, moving into this year. There'd be less question marks. I know that Montgomery and Decker leaving, Montgomery leaving and Decker still being a question mark is, that just puts a cherry on top of the frustration point. I get it. But I have a different opinion. I'm more optimistic about Detroit in 2026. I do not. Too. Yeah, I don't look at the schedule and think that Detroit can't win these games. It's a tough division. That's the reality. It's a very tough division now. It's very different. You have to give credit to Ben Johnson in Chicago, and it's no fun going against Brian Flores twice a year. The guy that was the offensive coordinator last year for Detroit, he had no answers, at all. And so hopefully this year, Petzing and Kafka have a better way of dealing with Flores. Because if you have an average offensive line, Brian Flores will beat your ass.
Oh, yeah. So
he just will. He just will. And so you got to have a very good to great offensive line, I think, to control all the chaos that he brings. So it's a tough division, man. And Detroit, I firmly believe in 2022, if they got into the playoffs, would have been a problem for anyone. The 23 team at this point is looked at as the better group. I understand, because they made it to the NFC Championship game. The reality is the 24 group was totally compromised by injury. And I look at the 24 season very differently than most Lions do. I think it was borderline historic what they did with all the injuries on the defensive side, going 15-2. That's not the way that it'll be remembered because of the division round, quote, upset. So 25 is very disappointing. I get it. The projection, it looks downhill. I don't see a leveling off of Detroit's potential from a team standpoint at all. I expect them to be back near the top of the division and competing for the NFC Championship once again.
I do too. So talking with Coach DC here, all 22 films this morning. I've got one more question. I think, are you up against it right now? Are you up against?
No, I don't have any students. I don't have any students till like 11. So
okay. So talking with all 22 here this morning, Coach DC here, all 22 films on YouTube. Question for you, since you brought it up, talking about the center position. And I like what you're saying that, what Brad does, and he seems to do well. And there's been a few teams this year in free agency that have kind of done the same thing. If you look at the biggest spenders, they went and then they attacked multiple positions. They would take two offensive linemen, 2 edge, 2 defensive linemen, 2 safeties, and everybody, the Titans, the Raiders. I mean, if you look at how they attacked it, they attacked position. They went starter depth at multiple positions. So Brad this year, for the Detroit Lions, Brad Holmes, he went out and brought in Cade Mays. Yeah, he didn't get the Tyler Linderbaum, or the, maybe even Tyler Biotis, but he brought in Cade Mays, who honestly doesn't have a ton of experience at center. He's not a born center. He hasn't played this position his whole life. It's about 18 months, about 1,200 snaps. Hasn't given up a sack in the last 2 seasons. Fairly healthy from an injury standpoint. But if you look at the Lions roster, you have Cade Mays, which you would say probably leads the group right now as your starting center day one. But then you have Juice Scruggs, who is also a center, former second-round pick. You have Tate Ratledge, who is a former second-round pick last year that they flirted with center last year and have still left that conversation on the table. And then you have Michael Neese, who is another center that is your 4th backup right now. So my question is this. Cade Mays can play guard. Scruggs can play all up and down the line, primarily interior. Ratledge, interior left or right guard, primary right guard. Michael Neese, interior, primary center, or guard. They talk about open competition. Do you see an opportunity here where the Lions are still valuing this as open competition going into training camp, and that maybe Cade Mays is not the starter from day one if Ratledge beats him out? Let's say that they go into camp and they're putting the competition, Ratledge, Mays, and Scruggs. I don't think Scruggs will beat him out, but if Ratledge plays to a high level at center, Cade Mays now becomes a weapon at right guard. What is your thought process on that and the possibility?
I think you said it earlier on. I really do like in a perfect scenario, excuse me, I like Sewell and Radledge being next to each other again. I think you said that earlier. So for me, that's what the best case scenario for me. Those guys did great work over there on zone stuff and on, duo, especially like, I think back to week 3 against the Ravens. And I think even maybe it was week 5 or week 4 against the Bengals, when they did all that 12 personnel stuff and they tried to run, away from Trey Hendrickson as much as possible because they didn't want, Manu to have to deal with Hendrickson because remember Manu started at left tackle that day. I would like to see Radledge stay at right guard. I think he brings that versatility that he brings, though. You do now have 3 guys, I think.
Yeah.
Radledge, Mays, and
Scruggs
and
Neese
who have experience at both positions, which is what you're getting at, right?
Yep. And I'm getting at that and the competition factor that what this does for Brad in a draft, and this is where I would love to get your thoughts on it too, is he's not going into a draft where he has to say, you know what, I have to get that left tackle. I have to get that left guard or that right tackle or that center. I have every position covered as is right now. Larry Borum was brought in. They have 4 right tackles on the roster. They have 1 left tackle in Giovanni Manu who has, a game of snaps and a bum knee and didn't have his best game. Yeah, he got injured, and I'll get your thoughts on him in a second. But you're going into a draft where you have 0 holes to fill. And
yeah, you're trying to safety net. I think, and someone in the Ravens Discord mentioned this, that the Ravens signed John Simpson as a left guard, and he certainly looks like the starter for the money they paid him. But A, it's no guaranteed money, and B, it's just a safety net. So basically, if you get to for the Lions, it's 17 and 50. The Ravens and Lions picks are so close together. Sometimes I probably refer to them in the wrong order. I probably say 17 and 45 or 14 and 50. But 17 and 50. If you had a spectacular guard who was there at 50, or you do a trade back scenario and recoup a 3rd round pick, and there's a guy there that you didn't expect to be there, I think they'll take him. I think they'll try to fortify this offensive line as much as possible. But that's kind of to your point that they have brought in Scruggs. Is it Borum? Is that how you say the tackle?
Yeah, so Larry Borum.
Yeah.
And now he's a former, starter as well. And he had, fairly decent season. The last, I think 7 games of last year, his pass blocking grade, I think, was 85.7. So I get it that a lot of fans are down on bringing that type of a player in for whatever reason, but you bring in someone in that's a vet that has experience that can play all up and down the line. It's versatility, and you're
that
getting
matters
comfortable.
Game day,
yeah,
that matters on those game day decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Whether to keep 9 or 10. I don't even pretend to remember how many the Lions do
8
on a game day. What's that?
8.
Yeah, because the Ravens historically have gone pretty low, So having a guy who is able to play 2 positions, even in a pinch, is an asset. Number one. Number two, I do think you're obviously going tackle to upgrade the talent there. I don't know that you have to upgrade the interior offensive line. To me, the needs at tight end, even though they didn't they bring in a tight end last week or something?
Yeah, Tyler Conklin. And I don't think that they're done there either. I mean, they have a shot at Max Clare, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in Detroit. It would be an earlier draft pick, but
super underrated player.
There's some other players that are in the 4th round that could also help this team. But yeah, continue.
I think he's just funneled the focus in the draft to a certain number of positions. Cut down the number of available players that they've got to look at by design, by safeguarding the interior offensive line in this case, and the nickel position on the defensive side. I think that creating competition is a good thing, to your original question, which I don't think I really answered. Sorry. Creating competition is a good thing. I will tell you that in Baltimore, our head coach for the last 2 years was adamantly against any type of competition at the guard spot. I mean, he pretty much came out and said, this guy's the starter at the right guard, and this guy's the starter at left guard. Left guard, he was a little bit less concrete on, but it was clear. Those are the starters. And even when the film was shitty in week 1, week 2, week 3, I'm talking about 2024, John Harbaugh stuck to it. And that's part of the reason why he's in New York today, is because he was completely adamant that I'm right. And whatever player I say is going to start is going to stay there. And to me, bringing in the opportunity to competition, it should be a good thing, in my opinion. I don't pretend to think that Cade Mays is going to end up. I think you're going to have Mahogany, Mays, and Radledge at left guard, center, and right guard. That's the group that I see as the best group, and that's coming from someone who admittedly was a big Christian Mahogany fan, dating back to his time at Boston College. So well, I think that. Go ahead.
I was going to agree that, from the outset of this season, I would say that Mahogany is going to get the first crack. But I love the fact that, Dan Campbell stood up on the podium and gave his, end of the year press conference. And then even at the combine, asked him a couple of questions there. It's open season, man. It's competition everywhere.
I like it.
And, there's one thing that Brad and Dan have always said, and Calvin Shepard to a certain degree too, even if you go back to when we brought in Malcolm Rodriguez, like the dude was a 6th-round draft pick and he started over guys that were making, $15 million a year. And that's because he out-hustled, outworked, and out-practiced and everything else. So this group of coaches, the style that the Lions organization, coach with is the best man will win. The best man will play the game. I don't care if you're a 1st-round draft pick making $35 million a year. If this player is better than you today, he's playing. And that's because they want to win the game. They don't want to win the headlines. They might make a few headlines along the way, but they want to win, man. And I think that that's the best way to win. Let me pivot for just a second, unless you had something else you want to add there.
No, the tone of what you're saying fits with my perception. You have the players scrolling along the bottom of the screen. I like what they've done in free agency, and I recognize that there's no splash signings. I get the sense that some Lions fans would be emboldened, even if it was like a Jadeveon Clowney, someone like that. I get the sense that. So for me, I enjoyed and appreciated the Rock Ya-Sin film from 2025. I thought he played his ass off.
Oh, he did.
I thought he competed against, that night against A.J. Brown. That was a amazing night that was ruined by a BS call, on the DPI on the 3rd down. I thought he played really well. And to me, to have him as your, for my money, he's your 3rd corner right now behind Reed and Terrion Arnold. I think that, Rakestraw, hopefully you get some consistency and availability out of him. But you're probably going corner at some point in this draft to bring in, again, that word you said, competition. And I like, Rock Ya-Sin, Cade Mays, Borum, I don't know much about, but I'm aware of the stats as far as the pass pro. And so if that's your baseline guy, he sounds like, from a pass pro standpoint, he sounds like an improvement over Giovanni Manu to me. I mean, Manu, I like the story. I like the talent that they saw, but I can't get over, this in pass pro all the time and seeing the wide hands in year 2, the opportunity for him to come in and in training camp, I'm talking about training camp last year, everything for him was just wide hands. Yep. And I get it. You're a big guy. Proctor does a little bit of the same stuff sometimes. Falele, the massive tackles, I understand. We want to get our arms around you. We can control you, but it doesn't always work, number one. Number two, it makes you susceptible to certain moves. And so for me, I like what they've done. I do. I don't think these are moves to raise the ceiling. I think these are moves to just stabilize the floor and the foundation, if you ask me, and set the stage for the draft. I think Brad Holmes and those guys, that 3-day period is going to hopefully bolster everyone's enthusiasm and opinion. I know you said that the draft is normally the Super Bowl for the Lions. I don't think it should be, Will. And
not anymore.
I
not anymore. We hope it's not, but yeah. Let me. So I was going to pivot. I was going to pivot to Manu. So you kind of beat me to the punch there. So Manu last season got his first opportunity to start in a game that Taylor Decker was injured, and that happened to be the Cincinnati Bengals game where he was going up against Trey Hendrickson. Trey was flipping, kind of both sides, but he definitely went up against Trey a few times. Manu was injured. We don't know when that knee was injured in that game. I don't know if it was snap 1, snap 20, or snap 50. Right. He was injured. So we have no idea to what true extent he can play this game just yet. But to your point, there's some fundamental mechanic type situations for Manu that are still present in today's film studies. But we don't have enough film. And I think that's where Brad is having heartburn. They know what he is in practice because they see him a lot more than we do. And for that reason, you just made the point very clear. They're not raising the ceiling per se. They're raising the floor. You're bringing in guys. You're bringing in guys that are starters, that have experience, that are raising the floor of competition. And competition, I mean, it breeds competition. Iron sharpens iron, the old adage that'll never go away. But iron sharpens iron. And so now this is, Manu in the back end saying, okay, I've got to level up this year. And I really need to put some work in on my mechanics, and I need to get my fundamentals down. I have the size, I have the speed, he has, the mass. I think he has the intelligence, and he just needs to play. But that doesn't mean because he has all the requisite size and the 34.5-inch arms and can move like a gazelle at 350 pounds, doesn't mean that he can stiffen up on the left side and beat out those bigger or faster edge rushers. Maybe right tackle is where he ends up, and maybe swing tackle is where he ends up in the jumbo sets, and he's coming in and he's offering a big wide body to block in front of the backs. I think all that still exists for Manu. But I think that Brad's doing it right, where you bring it in the competition and you're still not settled there. You're probably going to look to the draft to find the future, which if Manu ends up being a backup, that's a huge win for a guy that came from UBC that didn't go up against any SEC type competition or Big Ten competition in college, and he made his way to a pro, roster. So give me your final thoughts on Manu, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, to build off of what you just said there at the end, absolutely. I mean, we have, too often, all fans, myself included, are sometimes judgmental about these players and not recognizing, hey, they're 24, 25, 26 years old, making a whole lot more money per year than most of us do. Number one. Number two, they've reached the pinnacle of their profession, and maybe they didn't get to the final rung or final two rungs, but still it's a success. We all know people personally from our childhoods or our high schools, et cetera, that, made it to pro sports and accomplished certain things. And we know their names and we know their stories, but most other people around the country don't. They're like, who's that guy? I'm like, oh, he's a freaking legend in our area,
Yeah.
So
there you go.
As far as Manu goes, a couple of things. Yeah, he got an opportunity to play against the Bengals. I thought he got hurt. I thought it was late second quarter, somewhere in the third is where I felt like I remembered. But, I could be wrong. I will say this. The preseason film wasn't great either.
Right.
From the standpoint of what he was doing. I had a friend who is an offensive line guy, college offensive line player, or former college offensive line player, now coach. And I said, hey, can I send you this and you tell me what you think? And he said, well, tell me who the guy is first. And I said, he's a second-year player from, Canada. The Lions drafted him maybe, obviously sooner than most people had him projected. And he's like, the first question he asked me is, who's Detroit's offensive line coach and why is he letting him do this with his hands? I said, well, Detroit's offensive line coach is actually, really highly rated. He's really good. But that I think accentuates the point here is that Manu was doing things with these wide hands consistently that I don't think you want to do from a technical standpoint. In the Bengals game, for me, the limited film that we did get, they were protecting him from Trey Hendrickson. So Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati structure was the weak side guy. He went away from the tight end. If you recall, that was the game where, the Lions went 12 personnel a ton on the first three possessions. Those tight ends were almost always set to Manu's side. And since Hendrickson was the weak side guy, guess what? That means he went to the other side where Sewell was. They were protecting him by alignment. And one of the first plays where they put the tight ends to the other side was the strip sack that Hendrickson's had early in the second quarter or maybe late in the first. So you just can't protect someone whose ability level is that low compared to, a great pass rusher like faster, quicker guys. You just can't protect them that long. So he's got his work cut out for him in reality for 26 because they're probably going to draft a tackle at 17 or 24 or 28 if they trade back. And then you brought in Borum, who statistically or analytically looks like he's got better pass pro numbers. And who's got his hands full trying to get on the field, in my opinion. And yeah, he's still a great story. Doesn't mean it's anything derogatory towards him. But the reality is for him to get on the field in 2026, to me, looks like a long haul.
I agree with all that, and I'm glad that your memory is keyed in on a couple of those plays there, and I would definitely agree that it's really hard to protect players when they're out on an island by themselves. Left tackle is considered to be an island, and you have to play perfect football out there to keep your quarterback clean, and I think that that's what this team is all about. I think that's what every team is all about, is you have to protect that quarterback. He's your moneymaker. Jared Goff is going to be the guy that gets us to the Super Bowl. And if your left tackle is not protecting him and he takes one too many hits, I don't need to explain the rest. Season's over. So Brad, again, would be irresponsible if he doesn't address it, if he doesn't, level up the competition on the left side and bring in a potential rookie or, free agency is pretty much done. There's nobody available. And if all else fails, he has Penei Sewell to go to the left. If Penei Sewell goes to the left, do you see an issue where this could take a minute? Do you think it's 5 seasons playing right tackle from where you played left tackle at Oregon? You move to a different position. It's probably a little bit easier transition going left to right, but you have to relearn everything. He has to relearn everything again going to the left from a foot mechanic standpoint. How do you see that working out?
I think it would have to start in mini camps. It wouldn't be something that training camp would be. It would be sprung upon him and everyone else. You will know. Well, you'll know after round 1 or round 2, pretty much, right? We would not think you're going to draft a starting caliber right tackle in the 3rd round, especially in this draft. So I think we'll know. He'll know. Penei Sewell will, whether that's a possibility or not. After night 2 of the draft, and minicamp would be to me the place where you start to install that, and then he would, of course, tailor his personal workouts between minicamps. Leading up to training camp by focusing on the left side. I don't think he'd have a problem. I just think he's, you guys have, if you've watched my content enough on my channel or listened to me here, I think Penei Sewell's a Hall of Fame caliber player. And I think that he would have no trouble adjusting to it. It's not like, it's a horrible analogy. It's not like a basketball guy who shoots right-handed and all of a sudden Larry Bird did that shit, but nobody else who could shoot left-handed. That's not the same analogy. Tennis doesn't work either. I'm not sure there is one that actually does work. It's different on the defensive side. We were talking about Hendrickson or even, Aiden Hutchinson. Those defensive ends, they switch from left to right side on every play. That's the expectation. Depending on the tight end, depending on the field and boundary and the call, those tackles, those offensive linemen don't for a reason. It's technique. And so for me, just a flat answer, I don't think it would take more than 1 training camp and, a couple of months of personal preparation with his trainers for Sewell to be able to come out there at left tackle and be the same guy that he's been at right tackle. That's how I see it. So
you think it can be done and you think that it'll be okay. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. His pass protection has been the weaker part of his game. His road grading, run blocking has been ideal. And he's obviously finished plenty of games with amazing grades, but I think that a lot of us would agree that the pass pro has suffered at times. He's not given up a ton of sacks and, a ton of hits and hurries, but he still has struggled at times. And I'm wondering if, maybe there's the other side of the rainbow here, that moving back to left could reinvigorate his game again, where he's got to relearn things. He's got to pay more attention to his foundation, his base, his set, and maybe it'll spark something in him. I don't know, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. And yeah, it may take a couple of games. He may have a couple of bad reps, to start the season. But this is Penei Sewell. This is an all-pro. He'll get it, and I think he'll be just fine. He has the requisite size, to do great things on the left side. I still want to see the Lions attack that position in the draft.
Yeah, they will. They have to.
Yeah.
You're not going to, with the limited options that are there, how far do these tackles extend in this draft? Where do you think you get in the draft when you just don't have any more options? I think you're probably talking about 35, 40, maybe 42, somewhere in that range. And
so by 50, they're gone. Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty much off the board. Yeah.
At least anyone that could come in day one. And then that's what I was saying earlier is, I get it. There's been the mocks of Monroe Freeling. He's a left tackle as well, but I think he's a little bit slow. I think he's, a little bit light. Doesn't mean that he can't work out. Doesn't mean that he can't gain a few pounds. He's projected, right now to be interested or have interest from the Lions. There's Caden Proctor, who you can't teach that speed. You can't teach that size. The only thing that you're going to need to teach is a little bit more technique with him. And obviously the eating habits, he just needs to stay under control. Caleb Lomu is probably the next one, who is another true left tackle, and he's projected by the ADP somewhere in the late 30s, early 40s. I don't know that he's there that late. So there's three.
I feel like you're going to see, once you see, maybe it's not the third tackle go off the board, but once you see the third or the fourth go off the board, the teams that need a tackle, and when I say need, I mean need for 2026, that's when moves will start to be made, in my opinion, because the math here is also different. We don't have 2 or 3 quarterbacks that are going in the top 12.
Yep.
Right. So that changes things. Number one. In addition, 2 of the top 3 receivers, and when I say top 3 receivers, I'm talking about my opinion. You got Tate, Tyson, and Lemon. There's other guys there as well, but 2 of those 3, Tyson and Lemon, have some big question marks.
Yep.
That may push them down a little bit further than they, quote, should be. Tyson's incredibly talented, and I think he's for me, I think Tyson is a first-round talent in every draft that I've paid attention to. But the injuries, clearly, it offers a little bit of a red flag. So the question marks at wide receiver, 2 of the 3, and then the lack of quarterback options, to me, that means that these front offices, particularly, maybe Detroit, are going to look at that third tackle that comes off the board and go, okay, maybe we actually have to move up if we want to take this guy, or move back if we want to get in the range of that, Lomu, Blake Miller, and Max. I actually really like Blake Miller, but again, my own study on offensive line has been somewhat limited. But I really like how quick he is for as big as he is. I think he's almost 6'6".
Lomu?
Miller.
Oh, Miller. Yeah, Miller. I'll give you his range here. Blake Miller. He took the primary snaps at right tackle. He's 6'6". Yeah, 6'6", 315. Yeah. I mean, a lot of work, right? I mean, he has put in a lot of time.
For 4 years, didn't miss a snap.
A true Iron Man. And quite honestly, I don't even know that he's allowed a sack for the last 2 seasons, if memory serves me correct. No, he did. No, he did. He did. Yeah, he did.
Chris Aguilera, who I referred to earlier, he would be someone that if you wanted to talk offensive line, I would highly suggest him, because he could go conversant with you to a level that I can't do right now, as far as, okay, this guy's only a right. Well, Blake Miller's only played right tackle. So presumably in that scenario, Penei Sewell will be moving over to the left versus some of these other guys. Penei Sewell will be staying where he is. I really do like Blake Miller. I mean, but again, I've only watched a certain amount of offensive line, so far. I don't think that Detroit is out of options if at 17, if the left tackles aren't there. The other option is just, move back or take a right tackle. They could take a right tackle and solve all the problems they want. But knowing Brad Holmes, he'll probably try to parlay that into as much draft capital as he could, but balancing not moving too far back where he misses out on, a Lomu, a Blake Miller, or Max.
And to that point, realistically speaking here, I've done the math, I've done the research over the past 20 drafts, and I've really taken into consideration the last 7 or so.
Patterns, you mean patterns?
The patterns for trade backs and the value. The 17 to 24 drop back, if you move back in the draft, you're probably going to get an hopefully early round 3 pick. At the very best, it's going to be a late round 2 pick. And that's about it. Is if you move from 17 to 24, you will get a day 2 pick. You might possibly get another round 5 kicked in 2027. But
so you mean like 17 for
17 for 24, and then you'll get a day 2 pick and possibly a day 3 pick in 27.
That's
draft.
Great if it works. I mean, if you're not going to get, the other idea for Lions fans, and plenty of them would have this opinion, I'm sure, would be, hey, let's take an edge defender at 17 and try to take a tackle at 50. I just don't know that those guys are going to be there. I think the math you're describing is more realistic. If you don't
It's realistic
Get what
to.
you want.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're good. If you don't get what you want at 17, the options aren't there. I think what you're describing is more realistic.
Yeah, so if at 17 you're thinking, okay, I can grab if Akeem Messidor is there. I mean, this is a high floor guy. He's older. You're probably not going to keep him on a second contract anyway. But you're looking at a player, in my opinion, I think he provides more than Bane does. I know that's a crazy ass take, but I think from the get, he's going to provide more than what Bane does because he's a high floor player. Bane is going to have to process and grow, and you're going to have to figure out what scheme and technique is best for him. How can you leverage the scheme to maximize his short arms? And I think that Messidor comes in right away, and he does everything that you need out of him. But he also has previous injury concerns, surgeries, a lot of surgeries. I think on his right foot, if I'm not mistaken. And so those are the things. He
started out his college career as a defensive tackle.
Yeah, and so those things you have to worry about, right?
Well,
is older player, and according to Dr. Troha, who we had on last week, said that at 25 it's kind of geriatric in the NFL because your ligaments start to snap. They start to wear out because of all the time you've put in playing football and all the stress you've put on those ligaments and muscles. Now he didn't mean that definitively, but I get what he was saying. So it's not Akeem now. So let's say you do want to drop back. It doesn't make sense to take an edge at 17 because there's plenty of edge that are going to be available in the middle of the second or even towards the end of the second that are not much different than what you're going to get at the end of the first round. There's not much disparity between these players. If you're not getting a premium edge in the first 12 picks, you can wait till the end of the second round or middle of the second round, even early third round to get a player that is very comparable to what you're going to get at 17. And 17 would be a reach. Therefore, you trade back. You add that extra day 2 pick, which hopefully it's a late round 2. Now you're talking about adding an edge. Well, then guess what? They could also parlay that with another edge and grab 2 of the best edges at the end of the second, early third round. They don't have a third round pick. You didn't get your tackle, so to speak, or your edge at 17. Maybe at 24, Caden Proctor's still there. And that would be the biggest win and windfall if they were able to get Proctor and 2 edge or Proctor and edge and a linebacker in their first 3 picks, all within the top 75. And then it does make a lot of sense. It's now you added another pick potentially to next year's draft, a late day 3 pick. And then you still have all these 4th, 5th, and 6th round picks that you could package up and potentially move back into the 3rd again. I think Brad's going to move all over the place, but teams have to be willing to trade with him. And I just said this the other day. When you get a call from 313 and you're the GM on the other line, you're saying, "Oh shit. Who's on the board? What is Brad doing? Why is he calling me?" And so
I like his style.
Yeah.
And I don't, correct me if I'm wrong. In some cases, when the trade has been made, eventually we've seen, I'm talking about on draft day, we've seen the video. I think there was one, I don't remember which one it was, where you see Holmes's phone call with another GM. And those guys are obviously very tight-lipped.
Yeah.
Because they know they're being recorded in the draft room. I think Brad Holmes is like in those trades, he's like all business.
Oh, yeah.
And very efficient because there's a stopwatch that's running, you're limited amount of time. I think if there is a trade for Detroit, you'll probably find out around the 16th pick. I think you'll find out before the pick number 16 is done. I think you'll find out after pick number 15 because they've already done the math and they maybe already know who's 16. And that's one thing we don't take into consideration sometimes, depending on who's picking in front of you or maybe 2 spots in front of you. It could be someone that you have a really good relationship with and you've got some, how do I say this, confirmation of who they're going to take in a particular scenario so that then you can do your work 1 pick ahead of time and not have to wait until the last second. If what I'm saying, makes any sense at all. I think the trade,
to clarify, I think what you're saying is if you have a good relationship with, let's say, who's picking at 15, and if they've told you, we're taking this guy,
or in this scenario, you don't have to tell me, Will, but in this scenario, who are you looking at? So then you feel somewhat prepared for it, and you know who those guys are. And out of 31 other GMs in the league, you're probably talking about, people always told me you're going to be friends with 10% of the people that you work with. And that's about it. So, 31 other GMs, you're probably talking about 3, maybe 4
high level relationships. Yep.
Yeah, that he would trust enough. So I don't know who picks. I don't even know who picks at 16. My point is, I think if you get a trade, it's going to happen after pick 15 is submitted, especially if pick 15 is a tackle that Detroit was looking at.
Well-
The other scenario is whoever's one spot in front of you. I don't know who it is. Like I said, if they're looking for a tackle, then you're going to have to wait till the last second, and that puts a lot more pressure on it because now your available time to field a trade is diminished.
Yeah, 10 minutes unless they change the clock this year. There's been rumors that they're changing the clock. They're speeding it up. So to your point, the Jets pick at 16. So there's a relationship that lives there. The Ravens pick at 14. They stick and pick, to your point, that really don't move a whole lot.
Except for this year.
Yeah, I would say the Rams at 13. There's definitely a relationship with the Rams. I'm sure still there. I believe there's a relationship with the Cardinals. To a lesser extent, I would say Tampa Bay. However, there's something that exists there. We tend to pluck a lot of players from Tampa Bay.
And I don't. They got Muhammad and Anzalone, right? Yeah,
and I don't think that you do that. I don't think that you continually pull from certain teams' pools unless you have relationships and you're talking to the guys and they're giving you whatever intel they can give you without subverting their own team. But to your point.
Well, those things exist. I'll give you an example. 2022 draft, the Ravens take Hamilton at 14, who, we all know shouldn't have been there now at this point. If you were to redraft, he's a top 5 pick that year. But then a lot of Ravens fans were upset. We didn't go receiver at 14 because, we wanted a receiver. Got worse as far as for those people. The Ravens announced that they traded Marquise Brown away for pick, I think 23 or 24 with Arizona. Marquise Brown is a former first-round wide receiver. But that pick had been agreed upon weeks before. And here's how we know. Marquise Brown was actually in Phoenix, Arizona the night of the draft. He was already there. It didn't happen instantly. So that trade was agreed upon previously, but the Ravens didn't want to announce it because they didn't want people to know, okay, we're trading away our number 1 receiver, which of course makes us more likely to take a receiver at 14. It's my opinion that year in 2022, that's one of the reasons why there was a run on receivers from pick 9, 10, 11, and 12, because somehow the word got out that Marquise Brown had already been traded. I know I diverted a little bit. My point is I'm trying to illustrate some of these GMs trust each other enough to have things agreed upon beforehand. In this case, it was Arizona and Baltimore, who have long had a history of making trades with one another and helping each other out in various ways. So I think it's going to be an exciting first night for Detroit in the draft. And I would caution people about being upset if you don't get an edge defender in round 1 or you don't get a tackle in round 1. Brad Holmes not just going to stick and pick. If he doesn't get a tackle at 17 and he takes someone else, I don't think you'll be picking at 50. I think you'll be picking sooner than 50.
Oh, for sure. I would say that. I mean, if Emmanuel McNeil-Warren truly slips into the mid-20s and Brad's able to move back, I would say that that's the pick. Here's the other thing that I was going to say is, if the Lions do trade out of 17, I would look for a couple of things to happen. If Caden Proctor goes at 15 or 16 or 14 or 13, or 12, and Bailey's off the board, I would say at that point, if Dylan Thieneman or Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is already off the board, if all 4 of those players are off the board, he's probably moving back. If Caden Proctor's still on the board, he may not move back. But right. I think that if you do see a trade back, you need to look at the 3 or 4 players, to your point earlier, selected ahead, and that gives you the idea that, okay, they were going to take probably Proctor. He went, a little early. And then I mentioned this the other night prior to the recording that we did on Sunday that I don't know that you move out of 17, even if you think Proctor's going to be there at 25 or 24 or 29 or even 33. That's a player that if you are convicted, just like Jack Campbell, he was convicted. Jahmyr Gibbs, he was convicted. If you are convicted that that is the player that belongs on your team, it does not matter if you take them at 17 or 31. You got the player that you got. You're going to pay him an extra $1 million probably per year, but right. You got the player you got, or you wanted, I should say. And that's all that matters. And I think that we all understand Brad Holmes from that philosophy that if there's a player that he wants, he's coming to get you. And he's not going to take the risk on losing you like he did on Jahmyr Gibbs, which was the craziest gamble ever, but it worked.
Yeah, I remember that night, and I remember doing a draft video or a draft reaction video, excuse me, in the 2 a.m. or 2:30 a.m. range somewhere as far as when it released. And to that point, I had only done really, I had really only done game reaction videos to maybe 3 Lions videos. I think the win over the Packers in Green Bay in the final week of the regular season, and maybe 2 weeks earlier, I had watched the game live and then produced a reaction video, and I did some film studies on Lions players after the 22 season, and I made up my mind that 23 was going to be pure chaos trying to cover 2 teams. And that night, the Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell in round 1, I did a reaction video, and I vividly recall saying, "This is A+. This is an A+ move to be able to parlay this into it was an extra second rounder, right?
For Jahmyr Gibbs?
To move back, right, from 6 to 12?
Yeah, we gained pick 34, I believe.
Yeah. So just amazing. And I do trust Brad Holmes to make those decisions. The only organizational blind spot that I think we say that they may have is pass rusher. And to me, I think that's why some fans in the fan base are, so up in arms that no moves have been made there in free agency. And again, I think that to some of those people, they would be happy if Jadeveon Clowney had been signed, or Khalil Mack, even if obviously those guys are at the end of their career, but they've got some film and some numbers to prove it. So, it presents Brad Holmes. It makes him kind of look a little more predictable in this draft, that he's looking for a tackle and he's looking for an edge defender. I don't think you can get out of 50, 17 and 50 and not have addressed those 2 positions. But to your point, the safeties that you bring up with Branch's injury and Kirby Joseph's, instability or unpredictable nature of his injury, that brings up another factor, unfortunately.
So you brought up Jadeveon Clowney, and I found this interesting throughout my research. This popped up. The Jadeveon Clowney had the same exact or very similar knee injury or condition, if you will, that Kirby Joseph has. And that's exact reason why Jadeveon Clowney has never had multi-year deals. Once that surfaced, he's been the king of the one, possibly a 2-year deal throughout his career, the last several seasons. So
he's a mercenary.
He's absolutely outlived the injury, because that is an injury or condition that is very tough to manage. So I do want to give Lions fans a little bit of hope on Kirby Joseph, that if what I've read and researched and heard is true, Jadeveon Clowney has a very similar style of injury or condition, and he's been able to play, 8 seasons past the point of what anyone projected. But that's why he never got the big deals, because teams were afraid that knee condition was going to pop up at any point in time, and if you sign him to a massive deal, it's curtains, right? And you're going to eat all that.
To bring him back after 23, he was when the Ravens brought him in late in camp in 23, and then we signed Kyle Van Noy. Look, we didn't sign Kyle Van Noy until week 4 of 2023, and then those 2 guys ended up being 10 sack guys. I think Van Noy was actually 9.5. I was not a huge fan of that signing, Clowney, when it occurred. I wanted Van Noy at that point. I thought, okay, a little bit more versatility. I have to tell you, over the course of 23, I became the biggest fan of Jadeveon Clowney because of the direct and decisive style that he plays, which is, I'm going to play at this angle, and whoever shows up here, I'm kicking your ass.
Yep.
And, I won't say that he sometimes is the most technical guy. There's some things at times that I watch and I'm like, how did that work? Because the strike didn't land right or whatever. But
brute power and brute strength.
Yeah. For me, when he left Baltimore to go to Carolina, he's from Carolina. Okay. So he played football at South Carolina. For him, it was kind of a going home of sorts to go there, and it didn't work out. That was rough for Ravens fans, because there was a affinity for Clowney's style and his effort that will never go away in Ravens fans, myself included. So for me, I would be excited if you got a Clowney and you got any version of that, even if it was only 70%, because I like the way the guys play. But to your point, as far as the knee injury stuff, I don't know anything about that, but it should hopefully give Lions fans some hope that, Kirby could be around for 5 or 6 more years and continue on. He's on a historic track statistically as far as interceptions and tackles.
It
Go
was
look up
Ed Reed track, man.
Hey, go look up the other guys that are on track with that many interceptions and that many tackles through 3 or 4 years. And, it's not many at all. So hopefully he can come back healthy. And maybe the Lions know that, and safety doesn't need to be addressed. You and I think, are on the same page. The safety depth extends pretty far in this draft. That's why I feel comfortable saying, even though Thieneman and McNeil Warren and Caleb Downs and all those guys are really good football players, I wonder if the Lions haven't said, we're going to address safety later on, because we feel like the depth there, the quality extends further.
Yeah, it does. It does. But,
you still got to address tight end too.
Yeah,
so there's a juggling act.
To that end, though, I've used this term all off season, irresponsible. I think that Brad is done being, not saying he ever was, but I don't think he's ever going to be irresponsible. Here's how it would be irresponsible. If he did decide that I'm going to go into this season with just Kirby and Branch and what we've assembled through free agency, OFAs and internal, FAs, that's irresponsible. And if he does not bring in, a 4th or a 5th round pick, Zakia Wheatley, or, somehow gets his hands on an AJ Halsey, or, I would love to see Emmanuel McNeil Warren, back there as a strong safety. But what did they just do? They just brought in McCreary and Isaiah, who, Isaiah is absolutely strong safety type. And he has the same kind of, size that you would love to have back there. And he's actually rotated both, to both, nickel slot and back as a strong safety, depending on the package. And the same thing for McCreary. He's rotated to the boundary as well as the nickel slot. So they brought in versatility, and I think that when you do these things, and hopefully they get Harper back, well, then you feel a little bit more comfortable. I mean, Harper played pretty well in spurts, and I think a lot of it relies on. I would love to get your thoughts on this. Actually, Lions fans feel that it goes into what I'm talking about here. Lions fans, a lot of them feel that our secondary, was trash, and the edge, needed to be addressed more than anything. But when you're missing multiple players at the secondary position, who does that hurt the most, right? What part of your defense does it really hurt the most? Well, the obvious answer is the secondary. But the most glaring issue is that front four. So could you explain from your coaching perspective that when your secondary is weak and quarterbacks can get the ball out early, or at a minimum on time, why is it that much more detrimental, in at least my opinion, we'll see what yours is, that the secondary is so much more important to that front defensive line? Because few and far between are these guys winning in under 2.5 seconds. Like that is a foregone conclusion. It's not happening very often. And quarterbacks are getting the ball out super quick. So you could have the 2 best edge rushers on the planet, but if that ball is coming out because you don't have a secondary, it's coming out in under 2.6 seconds. Tell me how often your edge are going to win, and get to the quarterback in that amount of time. So how do you feel that the edge or the front four and the DBs kind of work together, and why or why not is a depleted secondary, that much more trouble for the defensive line?
So there'll be some parts of this, as far as my explanation, that's a little bit style of play. But first, sometimes it flows front, the pass rush, to back coverage, whether a play is successful or not defensively. And sometimes it flows back, the coverage, to front, the pass rush. And that determines whether what you want is you want synchronicity. You want everything, working together, and you want the pass rush and the coverage to be synced up. The pinnacle of that right now, obviously, is the Seattle Seahawks, as far as merging the coverage and the pass rush and recognizing. And I think let's do the back end of 2024 and this was worst case scenario, obviously, with the talent that was available to get pressure. Aaron Glenn had to bring 5 or 6 to make it happen. He had to. You think about the long touchdown, CeeDee Lamb against the Lions. May have been the 2023 game, so I may have my years mixed up here. The Derek Barnes missed sack in the end zone when CeeDee Lamb catches it and goes like 99, 98 yards, something like that. That was a third down, and it was like they're 97 yards from a touchdown, like 14 yards from a first down. Why are we bringing 6? Like, what the hell are we doing here? And so I think to an extent, 2025, even though Muhammad had a number of sacks, 11, right? 10 and a half, something like that.
11 and a half, depending on who's keeping score. Yeah.
Yeah. Hutchinson finished with what? 13, 12 and a half?
I think it was 13 and a half, 14. Yeah. So we're 14 and a half.
Yeah,
Again, depends on which site's reporting it.
Yeah. And Hutchinson had another 2 called back by penalty, one of which was on him for jumping off sides, and one of which was on somebody else. So you very easily could have had a 16 sack season. But for me, I do think that there came a time with Shepard later in the year where the accumulation of film that people had on him came back to haunt Detroit. And what I mean is, along with the personnel deficiencies that you brought up, Branch and Joseph not being there. Well, after Branch's injury, I know there was a gap between those two situations. And as well as time to throw is a factor. But I would offer to you that part of it as well is predictability. And that is these quarterbacks, like a Jared Goff, but Jared Goff and Matt Stafford are about the best that there are, along with Mahomes and Joe Burrow, et cetera. Seeing their the formation, how you're matching it, where you're standing defensively, knowing what coverage is going to flow from that, and I can attack it. And in my opinion, Shepard was a little too predictable as the year went on in those 3rd and 6 situations. There weren't as many times where the quarterback got the ball in the shotgun, presumably, and turned to look and then had to look somewhere else. Oftentimes it was wherever he's looking, he's throwing. And to me, there's a couple of things there. A, the guy might be open, to your point. But B, the coverage that's being played is known. And I can tell you from watching, my opinion here or my perspective is very skewed because 2 of the last 3 football seasons, I've been able to focus on a Mike Macdonald defense. Mike Macdonald in 2023 at the Ravens, and then Mike Macdonald this year in Seattle. I can't tell you how many times, those quarterbacks against a 4-man rush are 3rd and 6, getting the snap, looking here, looking there, boom, sack. Or looking here, and they have to go to their second read. It's because post-snap things are happening that they didn't expect.
Exactly.
The coverage has been obscured or hidden. I think predictability is a factor. And talent drop-off availability, Terrion Arnold, DJ Reed missed some time, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph went out. Those are big factors. What percentage, I would say, off the top of my head, I would say 50 to 60% of it is player availability / health, which was the original intent of your question.
Yeah, it is.
I'm going to tell you, I think 20 to 25% of it is predictability by the defensive coordinator by call. And then the remaining percent, whatever else I've got there, I think is like 15%, is pass rush quality, which I think, some people would probably apply more than 15%. It could be 33, 33, 33. That's fine with me too. I'll co-sign that as well. I do think, and you've heard me say this, they've got to improve the pass rush opposite Aiden Hutchinson. Hutchinson is proven as far as his ability to produce. If he had not suffered that catastrophic injury in 2024, we know what the stats were going to look like at the end of the year. The projections are probably 17, 18 sacks and votes for Defensive Player of the Year. He was on a historic start. So they've got a proven guy on the other side, someone from opposite Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah,
with
so
the interior,
I would
be able to provide some pass rush.
I would agree and disagree, and agree and disagree on multiple points there. But the disagreements are minor. I think that you need to have comparable pass rush. I think that if you have the stiffest defensive back room like Seattle and New England showed us this year, that allows your front 4 to be able to fire freely with 4, not 5,
Yeah, they're
not
rushing
6.
4, right?
Yeah,
The math you're talking 4 and 7.
So
Yeah.
then you have the ability to hang, more back, call it 7, and you can cover the tight ends, you can cover the running backs, you can double team the best receiver, you can bracket, you can do whatever you need to do. That ball's not coming out fast enough, which means at 2.7 seconds, 2.8 seconds, that quarterback's down. But if you can't do that, and you're constantly having to rush 5 or 6, it's not, to me, it's not a quality issue. It's a defensive back quality issue. And I'll say, like last season, where everyone was saying we needed better on other side of Aiden. And I'm not saying that there's never a time to upgrade. But AQM had the best season opposite of Aiden that we've ever had in Detroit. And we still had problems everywhere else. And so the only team in the league that had 2 edge rushers with 10 sacks or more in the top 12 of all edge rushers last season, and we still had problems everywhere else. So I don't think edge fixes it. I think that it offers opportunity, and I will always co-sign, to use your word, the interior defender over anything else, because the shortest pathway to the quarterback is, intruding on their drop and their, them being able to take a step up. When they're collapsing the edge, if that defensive tackle can get in the face of the quarterback, then he has nowhere to go. He's going to tuck and turn, and someone's on him. But if you have time, and it's not pass rush time, but it's time the other way, where you don't need much time to get the ball out, your edge will always disappear. And for Aiden's perspective, though, my biggest heartburn with him, and I think the short arms are part of it, is that in one-on-one against bigger, longer tackles, he loses. And he
starts for every team in the NFL.
He can't get free.
He starts for every team in the NFL.
Yeah.
I can't name a team. Me personally, I can't think of a team that he doesn't start for.
Oh, no, he absolutely does. Yes, 1,000%.
That's how, as a coach, that's one thing that we would always look at a player for another team and try to be realistic. Whoever that player is. Aaron Jones spent a lot of time in. Does he start for your team? No, he doesn't start over Jahmyr Gibbs. You know what I mean? When you're comparing talent levels, and for me, as a Ravens fan, I look at Aiden Hutchinson. I'm like, he's the best. He'd be the best guy that we've had in a long, long time. So I'm a huge fan of him, and I like the Muhammad story. But I have to say, 3 of those sacks that he had last year were on 3+1 rushes. So a 3-man rush, a 4th guy's a spy, and we're playing max coverage, and which was something that really worked for Shepard early in the season. That coverage, it worked spectacular against the Ravens, and of course he had 3 sacks against Baltimore. Right,
that's where the coverage helps, right? I mean, we did our dirtiest work against the Ravens when we were in spy mode, and that's because you're holding the quarterback. You're holding the quarterback accountable. And I mean, I could go all day on Aiden. I don't really want to, but the thing that I see quite often is, the over 4-second sacks, the 3 sacks in a game against the 4th string
tackle. Same thing
tackle.
Applies to Muhammad, though.
Yeah, of course.
Same thing applies to Muhammad.
Every edge rusher gets it. But when I look at other teams, like let's say the Browns, they have Myles Garrett on the other side, or they have Myles Garrett on one side. They have nobody's on the other side, and they
not yet.
But what I'm saying is they're winning at a high level. But they're only getting 4, 5, 6 sacks a year, and they still have one of the most dominant defenses in the league. And they're not accounting for what's on the other side of Myles. It's because what's happening behind them that, the DBs or the linebackers are helping control, what's going on there. And it's the defensive
Schwartz
call.
A big man free guy, though. Yeah. Schwartz is extremely predictable coverage-wise, so that would fit with the Kelvin Shepard. That would fit with the Kelvin Shepard style, because Schwartz, 3rd and 6, it's man free. He's literally telling you it's man free. The coverage. And it's normally going to be a 4-man rush, sometimes 5. But they do get a lot of interior pressure with their D tackles as well.
Yes.
We had tremendous trouble.
Yes.
With the veteran D tackle, I forget his name, and then the young guy as well, who I think is from Michigan originally.
So let me ask you this: How does Kelvin Shepard fix that? Like, what does he do this year? I want to run more zone personally. I mean, I want to run a little bit of man inside zone, right? But how do the Lions fix it? I'm so sick of the single high safety look, running man 50% of the time. Like, I'm so over it. I want more of that 2 high safety shell. Yeah, I would even prefer to have 3 safeties in the game if they're the right safety. And you put 2 and 1, you've got that triple, you got middle third, 2 outside thirds. That's what I would love to see more of in a nickel look, but a big nickel, I guess, a big safety look,
Because of Branch, Branch isn't going to be there for a while.
Right, several weeks, yep.
Yeah, so I wouldn't look for Branch until week 8 or 10. That's my opinion. But, it could be
hurts.
earlier.
That hurts.
But in any case, you're going to miss him for a period of time.
Yeah.
So Branch's unique skills, Branch could cover receivers. When the best team takes their best receiver and puts him in the slot, you don't have to run an outside corner in there. Brian Branch can deal with it. He guarded Christian Watson a lot last year in the Packers game. Of course, he did give up the final catch on the third down in that second game, the rematch to them in Detroit. But Branch, his versatility and how he can play man, and in addition, on the other side into the boundary, Anzalone, playing so much man on tight ends, you're not going to have those two players to begin 2026. I think, you have to get out of the 4-3 structure more often.
Yep.
On third and six, right? Against 11 personnel, because, Branch isn't a hybrid slot corner. Brian Branch is one of the best players in the NFL on the defensive side of the ball. Huge loss when he goes out. And so it shouldn't surprise us that the defenses, I know they won the return match against the Bears, kind of a weird game, but it shouldn't surprise us the defense struggled a lot when Branch went out, number one. Number two, losing Anzalone from a coverage standpoint, it actually might open the umbrella up to a wider range of coverages, to your point, because those guys are capable of playing man more often than, Derek Barnes or Rodriguez or whoever's going to be the will linebacker into the boundary. Those guys simply cannot play man on tight ends the same way that Anzalone could at least compete from a coverage standpoint. And so I agree with you. The coverage umbrella needs to open up a little more. I think it puts less stress on the DBs. In my opinion, even 24, there were some times where I was like, 3rd and 12, Aaron Glenn, like, why are we bringing 5 and playing so much man? Why can't we play a little bit more supported coverage? That's their philosophy. That's what they believed in. They went 15-2 in 2024. So, hey, it's tough to argue with that. Having said that, I think you see the same system under Kelvin Shepard to a degree. And in my opinion, it does need to evolve some. Whether it's show too high and play too high, whether it's show one high and rotate to too high, play more zone, surprise zone. I think it needs to happen more often. Does it need to happen, 50% of the time more? That's poorly worded, sorry. It just needs to happen more so that there's less predictability and it helps those guys up front who, they do need some help. Regardless of the sack numbers, there's too many times in 2025 where quarterbacks got a long time to get rid of the football. And, the Packers games, I think, to an extent, are an illustration of that. They went 0-2 against the Packers, 0-2 against the Vikings. Of course, the Vikings offense was terrible, right? That was all due to Brian Flores. And the Bears, situation, you swept them. Fortunately, you've got to figure out a way to win 4 or 5 of those division games next year against those 3 teams. And so, to me, to your point, while we have, philosophical disagreements about Hutchinson, because I think Hutchinson starts for every team in the league. Well, you agree to it, but
I would agree.
Those guys have to soften the responsibility for the coverage. And being less predictable, I think, is a huge part of that for 2026. Opening the coverage umbrella a little more, and that might just be, getting a better pass rusher on the other side, along with the interior pressure, so that mathematically we're only bringing 4 more often on 3rd and 6 instead of, bringing 5. And when you bring 5, there's less coverages you can play. The coverage umbrella tightens, as opposed to expands when you only have to rush 4. Seattle was in a very unique situation, but it's not like Seattle has, tremendous edge rushers necessarily either. They've just got a ton of them, number one. And number two, they play with incredible effort and they rotate guys. And that's, to me, the last point I'll make.
That's key.
The depth of the pass rushers, which again goes back to who, however many. I would have been a huge fan if they brought back Muhammad.
Yep.
And played him more as a DPR, which essentially sometimes he was in 2025.
Third downs.
Pass rusher. Yeah.
Yep. And
then draft one as well to use in early downs. I would have been a huge fan of that, because you help the depth out. And Hutchinson playing less snaps is a good thing too.
Yes.
There's only so many Max Crosbys who can play 100% of the snaps and give you that type of effort. It's very difficult to do that in a 17-game season.
I know you're up against it. You've got students to go blow their minds today, so I appreciate you. Let's plug it up one more time. Please go and visit. What is it called?
Draftsignal.pro, and it's a draft-oriented website that, people could. The idea is to provide film there as well for people to look at themselves, and so adding film for the offensive line, which Lions fans would, obviously be interested in, and then there's. I think there's 23 edge defender evaluations. You've done a ton of them. 24 edge defender guys there with film and evaluations as well. So, we're trying to make it as comprehensive as possible. If anyone has suggestions, they could certainly give me feedback through, contacting Will or through my email, which is available on my YouTube channel and or my Twitter.
Awesome, man. Always love having you around, Coach, and we'll catch you in the next one. Hopefully, the other conversation that we have, we get that rolling too, man. That's going to be a game changer.
I'm looking forward to it. I've already made contact with a couple guys, and
beautiful.
I think we'll get. Your idea was great. Just make it available and see who shows up.
There you go, man. That's what it's all about. We'll just create a platform. I'll talk to you guys about it in a moment. Have a good day, man, and keep doing you. Appreciate you as always.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
All right, take care, buddy. Coach DC, I'll be back here. I'm going to take a brief 30-second break. Rest my voice for just a second. We'll be right back.
Throwing middle, caught inside the 5. Jahmyr Gibbs to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. 14 yards on the strike. Goff to Gibbs. You can't cover that man one-on-one. You just can't do it.
Nice job.
Jared takes the snap, back looking, throwing middle. Got Amon-Ra inside the 2, to the 1, to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Nice job.
Mariota's got it back. Pressure comes. He's hit. Slips out of it. Rolling to his right. Now he's going down. Brian Branch got him. Sack for the Lions.
Adam Schefter at ESPN says there's 275,000 people.
Well, that was some party in downtown Detroit. 775,000 people shattering the NFL draft attendance record.
This is the future. Evolution. This is the future. Evolution.
All right, we are back, man. We are entering, what is it now? Hour 4, hour 3? I don't even know what time it is anymore. It looks like we're entering about hour 2.5. We're going into number 3 here. 2 hours, 29 minutes, 50 seconds on the clock. It's 3rd and 10. What are you going to do? Coach DC says we need to mix up the coverages. Calvin Shepard needs to dig into that bag of tricks. And you know what? I agree. You know why I agree? Because it's the exact thing I've been telling you all off season. That it's time to change this defense. when I look at the depth chart, and I'm not saying it's done, I think we're far away from being done. There's something that I'm keying myself in on. And that is, are the Lions going to go to a 2 linebacker set more often this season? Now, that would totally negate the need to go up and get one of the best linebackers in the draft. You could take one of the linebackers that are available in, late second, early third, or even into the 4th round as depth. If Derek Barnes and Jack Campbell are your starting 2, you might see more 4-2-5. If the Lions run nickel more often, I'm not mad at that. If they run big nickel more often, I'm super excited about that. Don't necessarily need to see a lot of small dime packages out there unless it's, 3rd and long, 4th and long, end of the game, you're trying to protect, keep everything in front of you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense there, but running the dime very often just doesn't match up well for me. But I think the nickel, the big nickel, makes more sense. And I think when you look at the roster that was just, put together so far, the DBs that we brought in, McCreary, yep, he's got sub 29-inch arms. He has short arms, but man, does he play like, a bulldog with a tail on fire. The guy is super intelligent. He's scrappy. He mirrors well. He stays in phase. And he's been doing it for a while. He's another depreciated asset, and I mean that with all the kindness as possible, Mr. McCreary, in case you ever hear this, that his energy in the way that he plays the game with tenacity is exactly what we want. He can come in and replace Amik Robertson. He can also drop back and replace Brian Branch. And I say replace Brian Branch, meaning temporarily. No one can really replace Brian Branch. And then Christian Izzian, same thing, right? He can play up close to the line of scrimmage where he loves to be. He mentioned as much the other day, as well as drop back. Now, to a lesser degree as a safety, but he's done box safety as well. Matter of fact, my notes from his press conference said as much yesterday, that he loves playing in the slot, close to the line of scrimmage, loves to be close to the football and uses athleticism. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He knows that. He never has been. But that's where he utilizes his speed and his ability to diagnose route concepts. For the Lions defense this year, I think the DC hit the nail on the head, man. I totally agree. Last year I kept saying, why are we showing everything up front? We're not rotating. Pre-snap, this is where Jared Goff does his damage. Against all the defenses that show you everything up front, Jared Goff picks you apart. Look at the defenses that we have struggled with. The Vikings, they rotate a ton post-snap. They will disguise and show you one thing, and then they will do totally different things after the snap. That is how Jared Goff didn't have good games. That was a poor choice of words. He did not. He's never really done well against Minnesota with Flores in town. We've had a couple of good games, but not his best performances, at least that I can remember out of the last 2 seasons. And there's a reason for that. Quarterbacks don't have time to survey and figure out where you're at and what you're doing once that ball has been snapped. You're focused on your progressions, right? You're trying to get the ball where it needs to go. And that is why interceptions happen. Because you didn't account for that guy that rotated the last second, dropped in, and then another guy kicked out. And so you've got guys in different positions, and by the time you get to that progression, that's sneaky good defense. If you're expecting Jared Goff's going to start off to his right, you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams to your right, and he's going to work his way to the left. Well, if those guys rotate on the right side of the defense, Jared Goff's left, and now they're in different positions, different stages, deep third, middle third, right? Then he's not going to know you're there. And if these guys are hung up and he finally gets to that third and fourth progression, he gets to the other side of the field. All he's doing is launching the ball because he's expecting you to be there. I mean, half the time, you don't think that quarterbacks just throw the ball to a spot. That's what they do. They're expecting you to be into a spot, and it's a quick glance, and it's a toss. That's how mistakes happen. That's how turnovers happen more often than not. It's all a blur, right? It's all a blur. It's almost like this one guy said it best.
It was all a dream.
It was just a dream, man. It was just a blur.
It was all a dream.
And then it becomes a nightmare when the ball's in the other hands or in the hands of the defense. So we need to see Kelvin Shepherd get out of his comfort zone this year. I think that he ran a lot of what Aaron Glenn was holding on to, taking the best parts of what Aaron Glenn offered, put his own little twist and nuances into it. But last season, I saw a Lions team that just tried to echo what they were doing in 24. Well, this year we need to echo what we were doing in 23. And they're going to get back to that from a competition standpoint. But it's time to elevate and evolve. I'm going back to evolution, man. When I made that intro video, the Lions were evolving, and that was the year that we went to the 2023 NFC Championship game. So it's time to evolve again. And I think that they will. I know that they will. This is the year that we win. This is the year that we win it all. 95% of you, 58 votes, feel that Penei Sewell can protect the blind side. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Is Penei Sewell on the left side of this offensive line the absolute fix to the Lions not having a true left tackle right now that can play to a high level? I have always been a big supporter. And by the way, speaking of support this morning, C. Webb subscribed. Said, hats off to this channel for having Coach on here. I'm now a subscriber. I'm not even sure how this started playing on my phone today. Divine intervention. Hey, well, that's YouTube. Putting me out there in front of people. We must be hitting the algorithm right because we're growing at a massive rate right now. And I appreciate it. So hats off to you for subscribe. Oh, I didn't mean to delete that. I was trying to unpin it. My bad. Damn it. My bad, dude. Just trying to unpin it. Oh, what else is in the chat this morning? Shane Smith says, thank you, Will, for keeping me up to date on the team. Absolutely, man. That's what we try to do here. But without people, that I'm currently meeting and getting to know soon, and hopefully have some of these guys on the channel. Dan Vians, you guys have already met. But some of the other collaborators here on the Draft Signal, I'll be reaching out to them this week and see if, any of them would like to come on and talk about their specific niche. Whether it's offensive line, if that's what they're really good at, if it's edge, if that's what they're really good at, and that's what they want to talk about. But we are also working on our own collective of collaborators. And hopefully, now I'm putting the cart before the horse here, creating another channel where all of us collaborators will be able to pop in every week. Be a standing invitation. At least 4 need to show up. 1 person needs to run the back end. I've already volunteered to do that. I have a channel that is already monetized that I've done nothing with. I've just kind of left it alone, so I might as well use it. And I might as well resurrect it with guys that know what they're talking about. And so it'd be a great way to, whether it's once a week, probably just once a week, maybe twice a week, but once a week, just to pop in for an hour and have a conversation on that week's topics, whatever it is, whatever someone wants to talk about that week. And it might be draft all year round. It might be prospects 24/7. And that's okay too, because that work never stops. That's why guys like Todd McShay, that's all they talk about is the draft. That's all they do. And there's other specific channels out there that do the same thing. Because there's more than enough work to go into getting ready for a draft. And, I do it start in December usually, depending on the Lions season. I start in December. This year I didn't start as early with watching as much film, but I've just been pounding it the last month. And that's why I've been able to get, all these articles out. I got two more to drop today, and then the top 25 is done. It'll be redone again in the 1st of April. And then all the videos are going to start dropping, where I'm going to start talking about all of these guys. I've recorded numerous videos that are going to start dropping. So stick around. This channel is going to be loaded with content for this year's draft cycle. It's going to be the most content I've ever put out for the draft. I wish I could do highlights, but there's a reason why the draft signal is, I can see why it, the idea, similar exact idea that I plan on still doing, is being able to put the cut-ups in there and not have to worry about it. All right. You put the cut-ups in there and you don't have to worry about YouTube saying no or the NFL saying no, right? You can do it that way. And that's what makes it all the more important. I can talk about the guys till I'm blue in the face, but if I can't show you anything, for a while there, I was using the pen, I was marking up the screen, and I was showing you all sorts of stuff, but YouTube was having a problem with it. And even though I have a credential, it's not working. So we got to pivot. So anyway, for the rest of the show today, how much time we got left here? We got a little bit of time. We've spoken about the free agency and how Brad has consistently done what he's doing now. We've spoken ad nauseum, kind of about the draft, where you can find players, why or why not that it makes sense to take a tackle or an edge, or it doesn't in the first round. And so that's kind of where I want to pick up the rest of the conversation today is, now that we're through the bulk of free agency and we have our draft orders somewhat set right now, I'm sure it's going to change, that hold on. Breaking news here. If I could just get my phone open. Oh, wow. Broncos just acquired Dolphins wide receiver Jalen Waddle. A 4th-round pick in exchange for a holy cow. A 1st, a 3rd, and a 4th-round pick for Jalen Waddle. Now, you're going to hate me for saying this. If you were to get a 1st, a 3rd, and a 4th for Jameson Williams right now, what would you say? Is Jameson Williams better than Jalen Waddle? Jalen Waddle in 2025, 910 yards, 6 TDs. 2024, 744 yards, 2 TDs. 2023, 1,014 yards, 4 TDs. 2022, 1,356, 8 TDs. That was his best season ever, his sophomore year in the NFL. His rookie season, 1,015 and 6 TDs. Compare that to Jameson Williams. Well, he didn't really enter the league until 2024. 2022 was a throwaway year. 2023 was a giant learning curve and some suspensions. With the last 2 seasons, he has had 1,000 plus and 7 TDs in both years. I would say that Jameson Williams has more upside and is a better football player than Jalen Waddle. And his salary cap is manageable for a team that needs a number 1 wide receiver. So you're going to hate me saying this, but would you accept a 1st, a 3rd, and a 4th and not trade out a fourth. I think that's the upside, is you keep your fourth. But if the Lions were to add a first, a third, and a fourth in this draft, well, not only would you get his replacement, but you would also be able to get that extra edge, that extra linebacker. You'd be able to move all the way up into the top 5 without trading next year's first-round pick. You'd be able to add probably 5 starting quality football players to this roster this year just by getting rid of one player and all of that salary cap and then trying to replace his production through multiple players. You grab that next tight end, you grab that next wide receiver, and then you shut it down on the other side of the football through defense. It's not a play that a lot of Lions fans will love because, right, we love Jameson Williams. But as a GM, those thoughts have to cross your mind. We have to do what's best for the team. And the team has needs. The team has holes. And if you give me those picks, well, I can absolutely replace what I just lost. It may not be instant. He may not pop out and go for 1,000 yards because no receiver really does with Jared Goff in their first year. But the dynamic ability of changing your roster to that degree, that provides way more than what one player can provide. It probably won't happen, but now I'm wondering if there's been any conversations about Jameson Williams with the Broncos or any other team, considering the fact that, I mean, that's a haul. You might even be able to get a first and a second and a fourth. Yeah, not every player's a unicorn, Robbie. Like, just because they're a Lion and they've had a fairly decent couple of years, he's not a unicorn. Like, receivers are a dime a dozen. They really are. I mean, look at the last couple of seasons. Is Jackson Smith-Njigba a unicorn? I guess by your standards, yes. See, I don't have a problem with moving away from players. So last year, Jackson Smith-Njigba put up 1,793 yards and 10 TDs. If you were to trade Jameson Williams and you bring in the next JSN, well, you just leveled up your game by 70%. He has 70% more yards and 30% more TDs. So how do you evaluate that? How many other rookies? You know, if you bring in the next Trey McBride, which I don't know that exists just yet in the landscape of tight ends this year. It's a pretty thin tight end draft from, you know, the true blue chippers. There might be one. But if you brought in a Trey McBride type tight end and he gives you 1,300 yards and 11 TDs, well, you just replaced Jameson Williams. And now you've got 2 absolute studs at your tight end. The ball could go to 4 different places at any given moment for a lot of yards. Who else was brought in last year? Tedaroya McMillan. Tedaroya McMillan is about the same level of Jameson Williams. Now, if you were to take J-Mo's third season and compare it to Tedaroya McMillan's rookie season, that's the same player. He doesn't need to run 4.34 speed. Matter of fact, Tedaroya McMillan runs a 4.48. You don't need speed to win. What you need are route conscious operators, guys that know the playbook and guys that can run the routes, snap off the routes, sell the routes, win at the point of contact or, the point of attack. JSN also runs a 4.48 to a 4.53. He's been timed at both times. He's not running the 4.34. And he just put up 1,800 yards. So he may be a unicorn with speed, but he's not a unicorn as a receiver. And you can replace those guys. See, I do this with zero bias, right? Zero bias. That's what makes me different. I have no allegiance or bias when I do this work to the player as a fan. Now, my fandom is different, right? Of course, I wouldn't want to see, someone like Jameson Williams who's on the up gone. Like, yeah, that would suck. But if I put my other hat on and I'm talking to you about, analytics and metrics and team dynamic, I would absolutely trade Jameson Williams for a first and a third and a fourth, or a first and a second and a fourth. 1,000%. Because this wide receiver class is so damn deep. If you pull 2 wide receivers, you might get at least 1 stud, and you've got another receiver for depth. And I would say at the bottom end of our roster right now, we could still use depth. Jackson Meeks and Donovan or Lovett are not game changers to me. Not yet. And maybe not ever. So there you go. We'll leave that alone. That was impromptu breaking news that led to a conversation. Oh, JC, that's actually a good it's a good analogy. You can absolutely replace JMO, 1,000%. You can teams just did it every single year. JSN just replaced JMO if he's on this team. Roya McMillan just replaced JMO if he's on this team. Had the Lions brought in Trey McBride, that would have just replaced JMO on this team. Not from a wide receiver standpoint, but from a production standpoint, because that's all that matters is production. Ask Brad. He doesn't care about height, weight, speed. Not one bit. He does not care about height, weight, speed. And the reason why is he wants production. He wants highly intelligent, solid football guys that eat, breathe, football, and they're a high character. Everything else doesn't matter, because if you produce, Amon-Ra St. Brown runs a 4.56 40. He's the top 3, top 4 wide receiver in the league. Or he was until JSN arrived. Can we replace Amon-Ra St. Brown? That one's probably a little bit tougher to do because of the other intangibles that he brings, but you can absolutely find somebody to replace production. But the other things that you lose, the leadership, the work ethic, and then how that spills into the rest of the team, it doesn't even have to be a receiver to recognize the hustle, to practice the same way, emulate that player. But again, we're talking in hypotheticals. We're not talking about my allegiances or biases. It's, can you replace production? You absolutely can. You absolutely can. Okay, so back to the draft work here. So if the Lions are at 17 this year, and I'm going to pull up a top board here. I'm just going to pick a random board. Let's do Mel Kiper's. I haven't looked at his in weeks. I don't even know. 4 hours ago, there was one that looks like it just came out. Well, maybe it's not. It says mock draft, Mel Kiper's pick predictions for round 1. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Perfect. Let's roll through this one. All right, round 1, Fernando Mendoza, no secret. David Bailey going at number 2 to the Jets. That's definitely a possibility. Cardinals taking Arvell Reese. That's definitely a possibility. See, now, Jeremiah Love is my number 1 overall player. He's my number 1 overall athlete on my board, and he will forever be. It'll never be Fernando Mendoza. I don't care about where they're drafted. We're talking best athletes, top 25 football players, not top 25 where they're going to get drafted players. If the Tennessee Titans take Jeremiah Love, that would be insanity to me. With what they just brought in and how they just built that roster, Tennessee Titans would be competing this year if Cam Ward can get his head out of his ass. It takes a lot of pressure off of him if you have a running back like that, though. That would actually be a very smart move, in my opinion. Caleb Downs at 5 to the Giants. I'm not sold on Caleb Downs even going in the top 10 right now, but let's just say it happens. I think that his medical red flags are interesting, to say the least. And I do believe that could sway some teams depending on what happens in the pro day for Caleb Downs and the rest of his testing and medical checkups. Cleveland Browns taking Monroe Freeling. Man, I think that is a huge reach, but at the same time, they brought in Titus Howard. They signed Zion Johnson and Elgin Jenkins, and then they re-signed Tevin Jenkins on the interior. You toss in getting DeJuan Jones back from a season-ending knee injury, and this is a completely different unit from what we saw late in 25. Freeling could be that final piece of the puzzle. His decision to declare for this class was originally a little bit of a surprise, considering he only had 18 college starts. See, I'm not high on Freeling because of that number right there, and because I feel he's a little bit light in the pants, man, and slow. But could he be a franchise left tackle? Potentially. He has the arm length. He has the requisite length. Okay, so Monroe Freeling's off the board now. You don't have to worry about that pick for the Lions. At number 7, Sonny Styles goes to the Commanders. That makes a lot of sense too. If they're losing Bobby Wagner, who's also getting older. Frankie Louvu still playing at a decent level. The new addition, they just brought in Leo Chenal. Yeah, this could be a game changer for the Commanders with Sonny Styles. So that's exactly why I'm saying the Lions move up to 4, 5, or 6. If this board just fell the way that it is, if you don't think that you can't get Monroe Freeling at 17, or Caden Proctor, or Caleb Lomu at 17, and the Cleveland Browns wouldn't be happy with that, I think that they would. You trade up to number 6, and you've got Sonny Styles staring at you. That's how you change this defense. You bringing in a game wrecker like Sonny Styles. I mean, 43.5-inch vertical jump. The guy ran a 4.38 40, or was it 4.38 or 4.48? I'm sorry, 4.46. I was close. 4.46. That's cooking as a linebacker. I mean, just impressive. 11'2" broad. That tells you everything that you need to know about that short area quickness. And then you take a look at the rest of his profile. He's got big old mitts, 10-inch hands. He's 6'5". He's 244 pounds. So he's kind of right in that same size as Jack Campbell, right? Size that you don't see very often at a linebacker position. And then he also has almost 33-inch arms. Those are really long arms for a linebacker if he stays at linebacker, which is, I guess, been expected that that's where he wants to play, outside linebacker. It's exactly why I'm saying the Lions should move up to 6 and take him. I understand it's not the most interesting pick in the world or interesting option, but again, if you were to trade J-Mo and then you add another pick and then a couple more midday picks, it changes everything. Absolutely everything. But let's just say we keep everybody we have now. We're going to add to it. At number 8, Carnell Tate. Yeah, that rhymed. I didn't mean to do that. At number 9, Ruben Bain. I don't see Bain going in the top 10. I don't see Kansas City Chiefs taking him. I see them taking Sadiq. 1,000% Kenyon Sadiq is going to Kansas City. Cincinnati Bengals, Mansour to Lane. That one makes a ton of sense. There's other players that could go here too. I think it would be way too early for Zion Young. Keldrick Falk. I know a lot of Lions fans like Keldrick Falk, but I'll just be totally honest with you. I think his run game is good. I think he has everything he needs to be successful at the next level from a height, weight, speed perspective. But also the football intelligence, I believe, is there. But I think he's going to be a late bloomer in the pass rush department. Like 18 months, a season and a half. He needs to develop his pass rush toolbox. It's not developed. It's just not developed. He doesn't have a second counter. He just, when he stalls, he stalls. And now you're going to the NFL where you're going up against, extremely experienced tackles and guards. Well, they have their second and third counters. He doesn't even have one past the first one. And to me, I think that's where Keldrick Falk has some issues. Miami Dolphins take Francis Mauigoa. That makes sense. They're rebuilding. Why not start with the offensive line? Go with the trenches. Cowboys take Jermod McCoy. I mean, that would be a Cowboys kind of move. You're going to take an injured corner that hasn't played in over a year. But then again, I could also see where they go after another edge here in Cassius Howell. I think that Cassius Howell reminds Jerry of Micah Parsons, but those sub 30-inch arms or 31-inch arms are going to be a problem. Unless he transitions to outside linebacker, and even then, it could be a small problem. 13 with the Rams, they go after the next receiver. Man, that's a goated move. Devontae Adams is aging. Puka Nacua is a stud. And if they add another wide receiver, that gives Matthew Stafford an opportunity to have an extra player to throw to, especially Puka Nacua in his health or Devontae Adams in his health. They both have lost games, I believe, last season, so it makes sense to add in another receiver for the future. And they're trying to win now, which that would make sense. It may not be Tyson. It could be Boston. I think that Boston is probably a better move here. And then the Baltimore Ravens taking Spencer Fano. Now, I didn't ask DC what his play was at 14. I'm not so sure that they need offensive line. He would be the better one to answer that. But okay, Spencer Fano goes. So now 2 left tackles are off the board. Oh, I'm sorry, 1 left tackle's off the board in Monroe Freeling. Fano, where's it at? Am I in that picture? Nope. Fano is more of a right tackle. So if they need a right tackle, great. And they worked him out at center during the combine. That's crazy to me. But again, is this because of some of the other issues that we're seeing? Let me close out some screens. I got too many screens open. In this draft class, you've got a lot of under, sub 33-inch arms for these tackles. And I know a lot of people say that arm length isn't that big of a deal. Well, just go watch the Super Bowl last year. Look at what happened to Will Campbell. He may have a better year this year, but I projected him to go inside and to be a left guard. And I think that was probably the right move to put him in at left guard versus left tackle, but they didn't do it. But who am I? I mean, I'm just a guy on the outside looking in. I said that he was going to have a bad game. I said it was all going to blow up in their face, and it did. And those arms were the problem. He let too many rushers get into his chest. He couldn't do anything. He didn't have any counter, and he didn't have any length. And when you have those two things going bad against you, you're going to lose the rep. And he lost 14 reps or whatever it was, 14 hurries or 14 pressures coming off his edge. Same thing for Fano, man. The 32 and an 1/8 inch arms, I mean, barely 32-inch arms. That is not requisite length to survive out on the left side or the right side of an offensive line. Right side more because it's not blind side. Left side, forget about it. I wouldn't do it. I personally prefer 33.5 inch or better. I want my guys to be longer than the edge rushers. I want them to be able to get their hands on the edge rushers before the edge rushers get inside. Tampa Bay, Kenyon Sadiq. I could see this happening here if he's not already gone to Kansas City, but I don't think the Kenyon Sadiq is here. And so if Kenyon Sadiq is gone, I think that this is where Boston goes if Tyson is gone already. They're going to want to replace Mike Evans, and Boston does exactly that. He is the next Mike Evans. Maybe not production-wise, but player-wise. And then at 16, you've got Ty Simpson. This is crazy to me that the Jets would take Ty Simpson this early, but if this happens, this is the absolute best thing that could ever happen for the Detroit Lions. It is the absolute best thing that could happen for the Detroit Lions. And then he gives us, yes, Caden Proctor. Well, that's one of the first ones that I'm going to agree with on Mel Kiper here. He gives us Caden Proctor. What's crazy, again, is nobody believed that when I did the work on Caden Proctor 2 months ago that this guy was ever going to end up anywhere near the first round. Everyone kept dropping this guy back. Same thing with Max Ahanachour. I kept saying he's going to climb all this way up, and now he's at the end of the first round potentially. And when people are dropping Caden Proctor back, you know what you're seeing now? You're starting to see, you know what? I think I wrote this stuff down for a reason. I tried to take some pictures and capture the images of their first mocks, and those still might be available. But I try to take pictures of that stuff and keep it so that we can go back and look, what did they change? Why did they change it? You know, was my take right versus what they were saying at the, very outset? All right, top 50. Daniel Jeremiah had Caden Proctor at number 28. Dane Brugler had Caden Proctor at 17. So he's getting it right so far. That was their very first edition. Mel Kiper had Caden Proctor. Oh, my God. He didn't even have Caden Proctor in his top 50. He has Francis Maui-Goa, Spencer Fano, Oliver Vega-Lone, Monroe Freeling, Caleb Lomu at 21, Jake Slaughter at 30. I mean, I think that's a good move. Blake Miller, Keelan Rutledge, Max Ahanachour at 44, Chase Basantis at 49. And in my top 50, the very first one, and I put a lot of stuff out. My very first top 50, I had Fano at 7, Tate at 8, Goa at 9, Delane at 10, Falk at 11, he's dropped. Mendoza at 12, and this is best player overall, not where they're drafted. Kenyon Sadiq at 14, he just went 15 to the Bucks. Boston at 15. McCoy, Proctor. Caden Proctor at 17. Well, now Proctor has moved up in my top 50. Caden Proctor has moved up in my top 50. I think I have him at 15. That's where I have Proctor. And I don't know that he's going to move any further. Originally, maybe I had him at 17. That's a typo. Let's fix that. He only moved 3 spots. 2 spots, if I could do math. Okay, so Kaden Proctor at 17. Behind him, Dylan Thieneman. Remember, I had Dylan Thieneman in my top 50 as the first safety off the board. But that was closer to number 12, I think, or 11 is where I have him ranked. I think 11. Emmanuel McNeil Warren at 19 to the Panthers. I have him rated at 16 right now. CJ Allen, I do not have in the top 25. Olavide Vega-Lone, I think I have him 13 maybe. Oops, passed it. And my first one, let's see where he is. Because he's moved up. I like Lone, and I've considered moving him up to center. It's funny that they're talking about Fano moving to center. I think that's a possibility. All right, so I have him at 20. Where does Kuiper have him? 21. And today, I have him a lot further up. Okay, at 22, you have Peter Woods. That's pretty close to where I have Peter Woods. I think I dropped him back a little bit. There you go. Max Nihanachor at 23 to the Philadelphia Eagles. Telling y'all, man, I got an eye for these dudes. And if this were to hold, I mean, that's just incredible for this kid. I hope it happens. Mekhi Lemon, I started dropping him back to. I was not impressed by his press conference and his interactions, but it's also the injuries that really worry me. Zion Young to the Bears at 25. I think that's way early, but it's not that early. It's probably 20 picks early or 18 picks early. They could do that. I don't even know who I have for the Bears right now. Avion Terrell, this can happen. I have Avion Terrell is in my top 25. Blake Miller at 27. Christian Miller at 28. Brandon Cease at 29. Damn, Kansas City has 2 picks in the first round. Son of a gun. Denver Broncos, Keldrick Falk. This is kind of where I see Keldrick Falk. Let's see what he says about Keldrick Falk. Because like I said, with the Texans, good defense, add reinforcements to maintain their top-tier play. The Broncos would love someone such as Falk in their 3-4 front. He is a 6'6" and 276 pounds, and he has the power to toss blockers aside on his way to the quarterback. Denver had 68 sacks last season to lead the NFL, and the pass rush could get even more potent, but Falk would also boost the Broncos' run defense. There you go. That's what I said. Run defense is where I see him. He had 11 run stops last season. So I guess, Kuiper and I agree a little bit, but I don't agree with the pass rush. I think his pass rush is going to be delayed. KC Concepcion at 31. I absolutely believe he's a first-round pick. And then the Seahawks, Colton Hood. This is my favorite corner in the draft, not named Mansour Delane. And even with Mansour Delane, I still like Colton Hood. I think he's going to be impressive at the next level. Just impressive. I really liked his body of work. His film is insane. And big shout out to DC, man. He has loaded me up with film. So this whole weekend, I'm going to spend a lot of time on the couch with my laptop going through film. I sit too much in this chair, so I got to get out of this chair. So anyway, yeah, I got the crud too, J-Rod. Man, I'm still getting it out of my system. Still getting it out of my system. So there you go. 2 safeties going in the top 20, says Attila. I do believe that Brad's going to move up. And I also believe that Brad's going to move back. I think it's all dependent on what goes on in this draft. I know it's the stupidest take you've ever heard, right? But I think it's all dependent on what happens, before the Lions get an opportunity to pick. I'll share this. Here's your updated Detroit Lions picks. Right now, the Lions are picking at 17 for now. They're picking at number 18 in the second round, number 18 in the fourth round at 118. So you've got a 68 pick difference between their second and third pick. That is 2 full rounds. That is 2 full rounds. Think about that. 32 and 32 is 64. They're picking at 118 from 50. 68 picks. If Brad Holmes does not get inside the top 80, I would be disappointed. I think that he needs to somehow parlay. I don't care if it's a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th round pick to move up into the 3rd round. I don't care. You're not going to get the dynamic football player that you want waiting 68 picks. And so yesterday on Twitter, or maybe it was this morning, we'll go to it now. Oh, look at all 22, man. He just put out my, an eval of mine. Really appreciate you, man. Really appreciate you. What a good dude. DC, what a chance encounter to have him on the channel over a year ago. And I think it just speaks volumes, not only to who I am, but my belief in how this space should work. Being collaborative is important. You don't have to always fight and argue with everybody. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that just want to fight and argue for whatever reason, and it gets old. It really does. It gets really old. Let me share what I put on my Twitter, and let's have the meltdown conversation now. This is going to be a tough one. You guys are going to think I'm crazy, and that's okay. All right, here's a Rockstock trade alert. The Detroit Lions are going to move up, and if they do, this is who they're going to take. If Brad Holmes, now the reason why I put this out is because everybody wants Brad Holmes to spend the money, right? To spend the money and bring in these high-priced free agents, and I think that has always been the wrong way to go about it. So instead of spending the money, let's F them picks instead. If Brad Holmes is going to make a splash in this draft, it is right here. Trading up to the top 6 requires giving up 17, 118, 205 in 2026. Plus their first round and their 3rd round picks in 2027. A 5-pick trade to move up to the top 6 for Sonny Styles. The Lions would receive either pick 4, 5, or 6. In return, they would also get a day 2 pick in 2026. And so if you're picking at 4, 5, or 6, well, then that means, let me pull something down to make me intelligent here because I can't do the math in my head right now. If you're picking at 4, 5, or 6, that would be, come on, give me a team to trade with here. There we go. Let's go Cleveland Browns. So if you're picking at 4, 5, or 6, that means that the day 2 pick that you're going to get in return is either 39 or 70. Probably 70. Maybe 39. God, if they could get 39 and still have 50, that's the haul. Okay, so let's say it's not Cleveland. Let's go to Tennessee. Well, Tennessee is going to want to take Jeremiah Love. I don't think that there's any doubt about that, so we can forget about pick 4. Or they may take somebody else, but they're probably not going to trade. So you go to pick 5 with the New York Giants. I mean, who did the Giants take with Kuiper? I just got rid of that. Let me pull that in. Let's go back. They took Caleb Downs. Okay. If you believe that Dylan Thieneman or Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is still available at 17, then you get one of the top 3 safeties in this draft. I'd still say that that's a comfortable place to be. If the Lions legit traded all of these picks, next year's first, next year's third, and this year's first, and a 5th and a 6th round pick, or a 5th and a 7th, you could essentially take pick 17 and move it back up to pick 10 or pick 11 and still hang on to your first round pick for next year that you got from the Lions. So you take 17, you move it to 10, it would probably cost you a 3rd round pick. Or even a 3rd and a 5th. Who cares? You're still benefiting with getting the 7th round pick, the 1st and the 3rd round pick next year, and you're going to trade away 17, 118, and maybe your 3rd or 4th round pick, which would be, well, they don't have a 3rd, probably 105, and you're going to move back up to pick 10 or 11, and you're going to get your safety. You'll get Dylan Thieneman. You could potentially get Caleb Downs. So if the Lions go to pick 5 and then they get 37 in return, that's a massive haul for the Lions to be able to get Sonny Styles, turn around and still get a left tackle at 37 or the edge rusher at 37, and then grab a left tackle or a linebacker at 50. To me, that's the best play, because then you would still have 128, 157, 181, 213, 222. So at 128, who you taking, right? Who you taking at 128? Let me get back to this screen. I need to see the players, man. Where's all the players? There we go. So let's just zoom out to 128. All right, Cage Casey. I haven't done any work on him yet, but there's a left tackle that's going to be available probably in that area. My guy, Takario Davis, who I think would be an absolute phenomenal pick for the Lions. He's been one of my number one, day 3 corners since the combine. The dude is like 6'4", and I think that he could probably move back to safety. But either way, now you've got a long-limbed guy that could go break up some passes, especially in the red zone, in your sub packages. You also have Tyreek Sapp, I'm not extremely excited about, but anyway, he's there. You also have Landon Robertson, the 6', 287-pound defensive tackle that could also moonlight as your inside-out guy off the edge. I mean, he's got phenomenal grades, decent speed. But let's go down a little bit more. Where's my Zakia Wheatley at? I don't know if he might already be gone at this time. You have Nicholas Singleton, the running back from Penn State. You could get him at 146. You definitely would take him at 128. You have the other tackle that some of us have liked, especially at the combine, which is Austin Barber. You could get him at 128. You could also get him potentially at 157. Now, he's the other pure left tackle in this class with phenomenal grades. His true pass set blocking grade was not as great. And in his arm length, I think he measured in at 34 3/4 or 33 3/4. I know I asked him the very specific question about his arm length. Maybe it was 33 1/8. 33 1/8. There it is. I thought it was closer to 33 3/4. So there you go. There's options, right? There's still plenty of options later, into day 3. Now you also have the edge, Max Llewellyn, who should be in that 128 conversation, potentially a little bit north of 128. You could be looking at him at 157. I think that would be a little bit late. He's probably going to be gone before that. Hold on. DC is trying to get me lined up with Chris to talk offensive line, which that'll be a phenomenal phenomenal opportunity for us. So Max Llewellyn, I haven't done a lot of work on him either, but I'm going to trust what others are telling me about Max Llewellyn, that, you know, for being a later round pick, yeah, you're not expecting the guy to come in and, you know, set the floor on fire, but you need depth. The Lions need depth. He's 6'6", 258 pounds, a little bit on the short arms, 32 and a quarter. You know, a former Iowa guy. I think that we have some good eyes and ears in Iowa. He ran a slow 40, 4.81, but is he a depth guy? And does he play faster, right? Does he play faster with pads on or not? I have to evaluate him for myself, but I'll take the word of other people right now that could be an option, you know, late. You know, late that you might surprise yourself with. You know, from a safety perspective, you know, when you're looking into the later round picks, man, my guy Zakiya Wheatley is just flying up these boards right now. He is now a third round pick. He's at 104. So, or it's end of the third, depending on the comp picks and how that rolls. Yeah, he'll be early fourth. And the Lions have an early fourth. And so when you're looking at the fourth round picks that you have left, if you've traded 118, you could take 128 and 181, and you could probably move up to 104 or 102 or 101. Absolutely could. Absolutely could. So there's a lot of options. And I guess, you know, on this trade, you tell me, what would you do? Here's the biggest thing for me out of this whole thing. The Lions, by doing that trade, would also save $16 million in average annual value of contracts starting in 2026, but really 2027. The majority of it would be 27 because the first round pick would be gone. Well, what does that $16 million do? Signs Jack Campbell, signs Jahmyr Gibbs, right? You get another player that you don't have to worry about signing now because now you have the money banked by not selecting next year in the first round. If the Lions left it that way. Hell, they may go into next year and trade 28's first round pick to move up into the first round in 27. But the conversation should be had. And I think it's a valuable and valid conversation to have. Do we really want to go into free agency and just spend a boatload of money on guys that have already put a lot of mileage on their bodies? You don't know what's going to happen injury-wise. Okay, well, I don't know what's going to happen injury-wise either with the rookie. Development-wise, well, you kind of know what you're getting from the free agent. You don't know what you're getting from the rookie. But let's say the rookie stays healthy. Let's say he's on a fairly decent developmental curve, you know, or arc like most rookies are. At a minimum, he's going to give you a high ceiling and will grow tremendously throughout his first year. But that second season, that player should be flying a whole lot better, again, as long as they stay healthy. So I look at it from, it's a cost-controlled perspective. You're saving money on future allocations to draft picks you no longer have. And you're also bringing in players now. High floor, high ceiling players now. And if you really want to go win a Super Bowl, you just go look at what the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots did. The Patriots did it a little bit different. They went into free agency. They brought in a bunch of players, but they drafted fairly well last year. The Seahawks, they've been drafting well for a lot of years, and then they went in and attacked free agency minimally with 4 picks or 4 selections in free agency, one of which was their quarterback. And they were able to go win because of how they drafted in 24 and 25. The biggest impact they had on the field was from their 24 and 25 draft picks. That'll parlay me into this final point, or one of my final points. Why do you think in 2023 we went to the NFC Championship game? I would love to know what you think, obviously in the comments below, but what is it? They got us there. I think I asked Robbie this yesterday. And my take will always remain the same. We brought in 4 starters in our first 4 picks. We brought in 2 All-Pro and 2 Pro Bowl players with our first 4 picks. Really, we brought in 4 All-Pro players. 2 of them have been snubbed. But they've played at All-Pro level. All 4 of them. Since they've been in Detroit. But in 2023 alone, Brian Branch was the enforcer. Sam Laporta was on the best rookie breakout of a tight end ever since Mike Ditka. Jahmyr Gibbs was absolutely electric after week 5 or week 4. And Jack Campbell, still developing, finally settled in now, but he was dynamic in his rookie season. He was a run clogger. That's why we went to the NFC Championship defensively. Offensively, we were cooking. We had one of the best offensive lines and one of the best offenses in the league because we added Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs in the draft. Those were the 2 key pieces to make that offense go. And defensively, Brian Branch and Jack Campbell were the 2 key pieces that made that defense go. So what is stopping Brad from doing it again this year? What is stopping Brad from going out and grabbing 4 dynamic football players early? Look at where we grabbed those 4 in 2023. In 2023, the Lions grabbed Jahmyr Gibbs at number 12 by trading back. They were also able to get Sam Laporta at 34 and Jack Campbell at 18 and Brian Branch at 45. 4 players, 4 dynamic players in the top 45 draft picks. I've heard it. I've seen it. People running their mouths saying the Lions have regressed since 2023. Bullshit. The difference is, I don't think these people know football. I don't think they understand the draft. I think they're actors. I don't think they research. And I don't think they really care. All they care about is clicks. If you were to draft 4 players in the top 45 of every draft, you're probably going to get close to winning the Super Bowl every single season. If you're drafting like Brad Holmes does. But when you're not drafting at the top of the draft, and you're no longer losing games in the season, and you're finishing with 12 or 15 wins, and you're picking at the end of the rounds, it's pretty tough to get dynamic football players without saying F them picks and going all in the draft. Now, Brad didn't necessarily do that in 24 and 25. He certainly moved up and moved back and moved around multiple times. But if you look at what the Seahawks brought in, they brought in Gray Zabel in the first round, who was an extremely important piece to that offense. And then they brought in Nick Emenawari, who was an absolute scud missile in that defense. And beyond that, they also brought in Elijah Aroro, who was my favorite tight end, one of my favorite tight ends in last year's draft. They brought in the backup Jalen Milroe for the future. They brought in the defensive end Riley Mills out of Notre Dame in the 5th round, and then Torrey Horton in the 5th round, and then Robbie Outs, another fullback tight end in the 5th round, Bryce Cabaladu in the 6th round, Damian Martinez, the running back, in the 7th round, and then Mason Richmond, the offensive lineman, in the 7th, and then Ricky White III, the wide receiver, in the 7th. So they had a first, a second, and a 3rd round pick, all within the top 92. 3 of their players were selected in the top 64. And that is what changed the game. In 2024, with the Seattle Seahawks, again, they're not picking super early. They picked exactly where kind of the Lions are right now. They went in, they got defensive tackle Byron Murphy. Look how incredibly important he was to last year's Super Bowl team. At pick 81, they brought in the guard Christian Haynes out of UConn. And then at 118, they brought in Trice Knight out of UTEP, the linebacker. And then they brought in the tight end, A.J. Barner, in the 4th round at 121. And then the corner, Nehemiah Pritchett, out of Auburn at 136. 3 out of 5 of those players were dynamic last year. So you tell me, do you win through the draft or do you win through free agency? Because six players that they drafted out of 8 players in the top draft picks over the last 2 seasons were dynamic for Seattle. 6 out of 8, that's 75% hit rate. And the other players are still developing. You win through the draft. Now, I don't know if they moved around. I haven't done that much depth research as to what trades they traded, or I don't know if they did much, honestly. But I'd have to go back and look. Either way, the point will remain. The point will remain that you win through the draft. All right. So John Desage says, Will, I think you know what Brad can't do, what you're wanting him to do. Why? Why can't he? Why can't he do it? That's a baseless claim. Why can't he do it? Give me an example or multiple examples. Explain it. Why can't he do it? Does he have a physical limitation? Does he have a mental limitation? Like, what is it? Teams won't trade with him? Is that it? Because he doesn't have the players to trade away? What players do we need to trade away? Who's trading players? Who said anything about trading players? I haven't mentioned one thing about trading players. There's no trading players in this scenario. That trade said nothing about players. You don't need to trade players to move up in the draft. Why is that a prerequisite? I'll show you something that is why I do what I do. There you go. I do research, man. Okay? Here's your research. NFL draft trades. I went back from 2018 to 2025, 33 to 41 range, moving up, moving around. There you go. There's all those. How about same kind of trade, 37 to 34, 43 to 35, 52 to 39, 50 to 40, 45 to 41, 52 to 46. So trying to take a look at where Brad can move from 50, moving up 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spots. Not one of these trades includes players. Not one. Okay. Detailed breakdown, all key moves. More 50s moving up. More 50s moving back. Here's pick 17, 16, 15, 12, 20, 15, 27. Trying to gauge what it would take to move up or to move back and what you would get in return. Detailed analysis, strategic analysis. Here's some more picks. Again, through that same lens. And then here's all the detailed breakdown of everything that was done in those trades. Very few of these trades involve players. And hardly any of them involve dynamic players. So giving up future draft picks to move up in this draft is something Brad isn't going to do. Why is that? Has Brad not traded future draft capital before? Because he just did it. We're not going to fill every hole this draft with starters that won't be replaced in the following draft. What does that mean? You're not going to draft a player this year and then turn around and replace them next year. Why would you do that? Only need 4 impact players from the draft. The rest is gravy. There you go, Attila. You get it. If you ask Brad in years past, he will tell you, and I can go find the audio and the video of where he said they just wanted to get 2 impact players out of the draft. I said that in 23. I said if they can get 2 to 3 impact players out of that draft, they're going to go the distance. Well, they got 4, and they were 17 minutes away from going the distance. I think I know what I'm talking about. Just a little bit. I'm not always right, but I am damn close. Damn close, and especially with this stuff. I said, how can he do it again like he did in 23? He got those picks in 23 from trading Stafford. No. That's not the point. What I said is, in 2023, how can you get back to the NFC Championship game? Not anything to do with the draft. But you don't need picks from 2021, which, by the way, he moved those picks a couple of times to get the picks in 2023. He moved up and down the board in 2023 to add more picks to select the best players out of that draft, Broderick Martin and Hendon Hooker. And furthermore, he didn't trade any players in 23 to do it. The point is, how do you get back into the top 75, the top 80, the top 65 picks? That's where I mentioned the draft. Not trading previous draft players or capital to move around in the draft. No, it's how do you get back into the top of the draft when you have a 68 pick difference between your second pick and your third pick? Well, it's very simple. You can either move way up into the first round if you want to grab that game changer in Sonny Styles, and that could just be enough right there. And then you add a day 2 pick from that trade, and yes, you're giving away next year's picks. Who cares? So now you've added 2 dynamic players just with that one trade with a pick that you didn't have, and you still have pick 50. That's 3 players in the top 65, top 75. That's how you do it. Or the other way, which this is the next draft day trade that I'll put out today. You trade back. So if you go from 17 to 23, 24, 25, at most you'll probably get an extremely late round 2, or you are going to aim for a mid-round 3 pick. So then you have 17 or 24, 25, call it 50, and then like 72, 74, or 78, somewhere in that range. So if you were to do it that way, then you're not giving up future draft capital, but then you can take future draft capital, you can take that year's draft capital, and you could probably add another pick to it. Now, I'm more in on that play than I am in trading all the way up, but then at the same time, if you can get Sonny Styles, if there's someone idiotic enough to trade with you to move all the way up to 6, the Browns, and you can somehow get Sonny Styles, you don't make a mistake there. If you value that player and you feel that that player is going to be better than what you got out of Jack Campbell, and playing as an outside linebacker with high pass rush upside, you don't make a mistake there. You trade what you need to trade within limits to move up and to make that pick happen. And you still want to retain your pick 50. And yes, you still want to end up with another later round pick. And you know what? If the Browns don't give it to you on the back end of the trade, then you probably won't have to give up that extra fifth or that extra, fourth the following year. But then you take your whatever you have left and you package up and you move up again. The one problem I think that Brad does have is he's going to have a lot of teams that don't want to trade because of the damage that he does when he moves up. Brad is deadly on the clock. So for all the people out there saying that he's not a good GM, they don't know what they're talking about. I'll take the guy that picks a 73% hit rate all day over anybody else. So both ways can happen. Depth is important. But we have 2 4s, 2 5s, 2 6s, and a 7th. Those are all depth players. You might get one starter out of that. Maybe. The numbers tell you that it won't happen because less than 15% of third rounders ever start a game or become starters, and less than 3% of those 15% become elite football players. That's like less than one player per draft in the third round, or less than one player every 2 drafts in the third round. So that's where I challenge the people that say, oh, Brad missed on Broderick Martin. Brad missed on Hendon Hooker. The dude got 4 Pro Bowl and 4 All-Pros out of that draft. Who cares what happened after that? And those players in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, they don't play. On most teams, they don't even make the roster. They had to make our roster because we were still thin in 23. But Brad also recognized, okay, player got hurt, player's not developing. He gave him 1.5 years and cut him. No sweat off his back. A lot of those picks were free. Extra picks doesn't mean anything. Hindsight will always be 20/20. Here's what I want from all of the negative Nancys out there and all the toxic media, the 23% that say they don't like or subscribe to the channel, but they listen every day because then they take all my information and then they go talk about it on their channels. Like they said it first, right? I know it happens all the time. I hear about it. So here's what I want. I've already put it out there multiple times. Put your money where your mouth is. Challenge me, take the challenge in the draft day challenge. You make your picks, and I'll give you like 5 ways to make your picks. You can pick the position per round. You can pick the player per round. We'll go $15 a sheet. I'll take on everybody's sheet. If you beat me, we'll go point system, right? If you say that the Lions are sticking and picking at 17 and they move back to 24, and I say that they're moving back to 22, well, we both technically got it wrong, but I got it right. They move back. I got that part right. And I'm 2 picks closer to 24. I win that round. If I say they're taking a wide receiver in round 4 and you're saying they're taking a corner and they take an edge, well, we both got it wrong. The third way is picking offense or defense. If you say they're taking offense in the first round and I say they're taking defense in the first round and they take a punter, well, we both lose. God, I hope they don't do that. But you get the idea. So I'm willing to challenge anybody for $15 a sheet. And 100% of what I make goes into Rockhound Cancer Foundation. And it's up to you if you win to take the money or donate it. It's totally up to you. But it's going to be one big pool, right? And so if multiple people get, let's say, 30 points, right? And there's 20 of you, you're going to split the pot. But if I beat every single one of you, right? That's 15 for me, right? The people that beat me, they split the pot. So I'd have to beat everybody to even win 1 cent. Now that's a challenge I'm willing to put out there. I don't think anybody else will. I think people like to, I'm not saying you, John, because you've been around forever, but I'm not saying you, but people like to talk a lot, man. They don't put their money where their mouth is. And honestly, I think this would separate who does what for Detroit media. I'll take them all on. I don't care who it is. All of them. But outside of that, I put up a $1,000 bet the other day that the Lions are going to win the division this year. And if they don't, then all of you right here get to pick where I spend my $1,000. You get to pick the charities. We do it live. And I'm going to send that on March 13th of 2027. I think that's the day we did it, right? I put it on Twitter, so it's there. March 13th, 2027 is when we'll come back and we'll say, did they make the division? Okay. Well, for those of you that lost, you could donate $5 to Rockhound Cancer Foundation. I'll donate $1,000 if I lose. To somewhere other than Rockhound Cancer Foundation. You guys get to pick. But I want to go in and look at something real quick, then I'm going to get out of here. So in 2021, the Lions sent, now I'm going to have to verify this here in a little bit, but according to this research, the Lions sent pick 153 and a 2022 future draft pick, 4th round pick to Cleveland. The return was pick 113, where the Lions selected Derek Barnes. So they gave up future draft capital then, a 4th round pick. They also got pick 257, where they selected Jamar Jefferson. Jefferson didn't work out, but Barnes did, right? 2022, the Lions sent pick 32, was it pick 34 and pick 66 to the Vikings. And in return, they ended up getting Jamison Williams, the pick 12, and pick 46, Josh Paschal. Paschal didn't work out. Jamison Williams did. They gave up 3 second-round picks. Is that how I'm reading it? 3 second-round picks. And if I'm not mistaken, pick 34 or 32, one of them came from the Stafford trade. Or the Hawkinson trade. The Lions sent pick 181 to the Eagles. They ended up getting Malcolm Rodriguez at 188 and Chase Lucas at 237. In 2023, the Lions sent pick 6 and pick 81 to the Cardinals in return of 12 and 34 and 168, which was later traded, but they got Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta by trading back. And I think that's always the best move, to move back if you can, especially if you can get early draft picks. The Lions then sent in 23 pick 48 and pick 159 to Green Bay. They ended up getting Brian Branch at 45. Was it 45? All right, he was selected at 45. It's still nuts that we got him in the middle of the second. Round 2, pick 14. (2024), the Lions sent 29 and 73 to the Cowboys, and they ended up picking up Terry and Arnold at 24, and then a 2025 7th-round pick. They also sent a 2025 3rd-round pick to the Jets in exchange for pick 126. So they sent future draft capital, future third, for Giovanni Manu. The Lions also sent pick 164, 201, and another 2025 fourth-round pick to Philadelphia to get Sione Vaki, and then at 210, Christian Mahogany. Both those picks worked out. Vaki just needs to stay healthy. So to answer the question, will Brad Holmes trade future draft capital? Yes, he will. He's done it in every draft, just about. Do we need players to trade? No, we don't. We don't need any players to trade. But it doesn't mean that we don't have them, because if even for one iota, of an opportunity that a team is willing to overpay you for Jamison Williams, like they just overpaid for Jalen Waddle, I think you consider it. All right, I've been on way too long today. I know we lose a lot of people after 11 o'clock. It's 12:30. I got to run. You guys have been great. Always fun having these debates and these great conversations. And then guess what? We get to do it again tomorrow. So we'll see you guys later. Probably go to Detroit Lions. Adios. I got a whole day of fixing this back end now. I'm not excited about that. See you guys.
Yeah, 1 2 1 2.
Hey yo, AC.
1 2 1 2. Mic check. Hey, can y'all hear me out there? Hey.
Against all odds. 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 Against all odds.
Shout out to Rockhound, Detroit Lions, man. One pride.